I hope next year the committee won't get caught up in what the social media and a lot of people who are fringe fans get caught up in, which is wins. They had 11 wins. They must be good. Who did they beat? I think is much more important than how many wins you have. That's old school way of approaching it. Has Indiana having 11 wins and beating nobody. That doesn't mean they're one of the 12 best teams. Remember.
I can't believe that's a real quote from Curb Street. Legitimately cannot believe it. Don't get caught up in what the fringe fans care about, which is wins.
Those damn fans. Educate yourself.
Those sick fans. Yeah, we should be having competitions like, I don't know, who has the best mascot?
Ooh.
Which mascot would win in a battle to the death?
My wife would go through and pick the best color scheme for the teams.
That would be a better determinator on who should get to the college football playoff. Maybe, Alex, we should just go by uniforms. Ooh. Who had the best uniform combinations this season? Who had the best helmets? We could go by that. This is going to become suddenly a recital where we're going to judge people instead of actually finding out who won the competition. With Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's good to be back with you guys here on BK and Ferrario. We'll be with you until 2 o'clock today. Tomorrow, then we're off for the rest of the week once again. Woo. T-Bone getting some well-deserved vacation. Alex, the college football playoff stunk this weekend. There's no way around it.
Yeah,
it was horrible. Every single game was a blowout. They weren't worth watching. Your time would have been better spent, as mine was, on a plane. I watched them while I was on the plane. I fell asleep during half of them. Just to be totally honest, I missed nothing. For the Notre Dame game, that appears, based on the final score, to be the closest of the games.
It was not.
It was an ass whooping. Notre Dame, that was never in question. Texas beat the crap out of Clemson. Penn State, I think it was like 3 pick sixes in the first 7 minutes of the game or something. That one was over before it ever really began. And Ohio State remembered, oh, yeah, we are one of the most talented teams in the country, and they whooped up on Tennessee. I've heard a lot of people saying the thing that Curb Street is saying there, which is...
Hold on, you've heard a lot of people say don't worry about the wins?
I mean, more or less, yeah. If you're arguing that Ole Miss or Alabama should have been in, that's your only argument, is that the wins weren't important. It's about who you beat.
That's an argument.
And those people seem to not care about who you lost to. Like, that's always left out of it, that Ole Miss lost to Kentucky and that Alabama lost to Oklahoma. At a certain point in time, that has to matter as well. We have to come to the realization as a college football watching community, this was always the likely outcome. It was the outcome when we had 4 teams in the playoff. Hell, this happened a lot of the time when we had 2 teams in what was the national championship game and not even a playoff at the time. We just decided, hey, these are the 2 best. Let's put them in a game together and find out who wins, and we will be crowning a champion that way. There is no, great way to crown a champion in college sports because there's 130 teams and they have wildly different schedules and wildly different strengths of record. And so, yeah, the best way to determine who your champion is to put, 6 to 12 teams into a playoff and do it based on who won the most games during the regular season. And let's see how they do. It did not give us a single quality game over the weekend. I believe that will change at some point in the next round or two, because as you whittle this thing down to the true best teams that remain, we're going to get some better games. But even next week, man, Penn State is a 10.5-point favorite against Boise. Texas is a 14-point favorite on the road at Arizona State. There's going to be some bad games in this playoff. That's what we signed up for when we expanded.
Yeah, I mean, look, I won't lie. I hated it. I hated the weekend. I was really excited to just sit in front of the television. I had no hockey this weekend, so I was excited to just sit and watch college football playoffs. And then the first game takes place, and it was the second quarter, and I'm like, I'm not watching any more of this. And then the next night, it was Saturday at 11 a.m. I'm home with the girls. I turn it on. Halftime. It's 14-point there. I'm not watching. The quarterback, SMU, couldn't throw a completion.
That was bad.
And I'm like, this is a college football playoff game? I hated it. And then, you sit in your own anger and madness, and you're like, God, fix this. This is stupid. BK's right. There's no fixing this. This is what everybody was excited about. I was excited for a 12-team playoff. Did I think one of these 10, 11, 12-seeded teams was going to go out there and possibly create an upset or possibly create some madness? Yeah, maybe the optimistic Ferrario thought so. But then I actually realized that, yeah, there's probably 3 or 4 really good college football teams, and then everyone else is just kind of there. But that's what you get excited for. You get excited for these 12 teams to go in. And I love that Dennis Dodd's piece that he put out there after the games. I think the first line was at about 7 o'clock Eastern on Saturday, Lane Kiffin swallowed his keyboard. Yeah. Because, that's the 2 teams we were talking about that should have been in. Frankly, I think Miami would have got their butts whooped in one of those games if they got in. We're talking about Alabama or Ole Miss. And if I got to be honest with you, I think Ole Miss probably is losing one of those football games, whether they take on Texas or whoever they're going up against. But for the...
And maybe they wouldn't have. They didn't deserve to get in, guys.
Yeah, don't lose the third game. Exactly. Don't lose the third football game if you want to get in.
At some point, winning has to matter. And I know that Kirk Herbstreit is telling you that you're a sick fan if you think that winning matters in college football.
Stop it.
You're not. That's how we judge the teams, is you play the games. And then we find out who comes out victorious, because winning is really freaking hard when you're counting on 18 to 22-year-olds to be consistent every week. It's what made Nick Saban so remarkable. Is every year it was death, taxes, and Nick Saban's getting you to 10. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he's getting you to 12, but he's getting you to 10, and then we'll see if he can get that 1 or 2 extra games at the end that allows him to get into the playoff. I saw this from Jonathan Jones over the weekend, who writes for CBS Sports. We had a decade of the 4-team playoff. This is not the 12-team, the 4-team playoff, a decade of it. In the semifinals with that 4-team playoff structure, we had 10 games that were decided by 20-plus points, 10 of them. 7 games were decided by a score. So of the games that were in the 4-team playoff, the vast majority were decided by 20 or more points, guys. This was with a 4-team playoff. We've now expanded to 12. So yeah, the overwhelming likelihood was that we would see something like this. In the college football playoff finals in that decade, we saw 4 games decided by 20 or more points. 4 of them. So almost half of the games that were played in the college football playoff era of the final, the 2 best teams in the country, according to everybody's understanding of it, half of them were decided by at least 20 points. So yeah, we're going to get some real clunkers in this thing, man. It's going to potentially look bad. I'm not expecting a whole lot of fun to be had for that Texas versus Arizona State game. Apologies to our friend and our colleague Katie Wu. I don't think that's going to go particularly well for the Sun Devils.
She probably saw Texas Clemson and thought the same thing.
It's going to be the biggest game in the history of Arizona State football. That's what's going to happen there. The biggest game in the history of the program. And that's what this is about. If you're a fan of a team that somehow, some way, everything comes together, and in this beautiful season, your team was able to come out victorious and you won more 11 games as Arizona State did this year, you get the opportunity. And that's all you ask for, is the opportunity to be a part of it. That's what the NCAA tournament's so beautiful for. You can see these teams like Lehigh or what was it, Loyola Marymount? Is that Loyola of Chicago?
Chicago. Sister Jean.
They go on these crazy runs, and you learn about them as they go through. Like, that's what this is supposed to be. You can potentially get some Cinderella stories, and we now have that available to us in football. And now people want to go the other direction again, where we had, like, this computer system, the BCS that was determining who our champion was. That sucked, too. There's no great way to go about this. But for all the people that are out here saying how terrible this past weekend was, and the game sucked, there's no getting around that, I haven't heard a lot of answers as to what you do to fix it. What is the solution? That's where I'm really struggling to understand what these people's argument is. Like, okay, cool. We all agree with the problem. The problem is the games weren't fun to watch. What is your recommendation as to how we fix that problem?
If you do
I don't see one.
If you do the top 4 seeds as buys, does that at least solve some of it? Because then you're not watching Texas beat up on Clemson or Penn State beat up on SMU.
Not really. Because now, instead, next week we get some bad games. Or Arizona State is potentially playing against Ohio State. You think that's going to go much better?
Oh, God, no.
Than what Tennessee did?
It's going to be awful.
Yeah.
And I'd rather have that happen in the first round. I'm answering my own question here, too. I'd rather happen in the first round than watch the quarterfinal where I'm closer to the college football championship, watch boring games
Did you want to see Boise against Boise against Indiana? And then Notre Dame against Clemson, something like that. Like, I just don't, there's not a solution to this. The truth is there weren't 12 teams that were worthy of the college football playoff in this season. We kind of knew that. We knew this was a down year in general for college football. I think now what you're seeing is Ohio State, I think, can win the national championship. I think Oregon can win the national championship. I think Notre Dame could. I think Georgia could. I think Texas could. I think Penn State has an off chance to be able to. Now we're getting to the spot where we should get some good games the rest of the way. I don't know that Penn State Boise is going to be great. I don't think Texas Arizona State will be. But I think Ohio State Oregon has a chance to be a classic. I think Notre Dame Georgia could be a really good game. So we got a couple there. And then in the next round, there's the ability to get more quality games out of this version of the playoff than what we had previously. And ultimately, that's really all you could ask for.
Yeah.
All right. Do want to get to one other thing. Big news in the college football world for the local fans. I've got my Mizzou jacket on today. M-I-Z.
Why would you do that, buddy? Why would you do that?
Bo Pribula is the next quarterback at the University of Missouri. The former backup quarterback at Penn State, school that is still playing right now. It's not a bad place to be.
Could have played on Saturday.
I don't like his decision-making already.
Drew Aller is their starting quarterback. He's really, really good. Bo Pribula had some specific packages that he was a part of, especially when they got into the red zone. He's a great runner. We don't know about his arm yet because he hasn't really thrown a whole lot at the college football level, but a lot of programs wanted them. Mizzou ends up coming out on top. They get their man at the quarterback position. Mizzou fans are wondering today, okay, what does this mean? What's this mean for Sam Horn? What's this mean for the potential to go out and get another quarterback? My understanding, Alex, is that this is the guy. This is who they wanted. They had a few of them. Miller Moss was one from USC. Fernando Mendoza from Cal was another that they were in search of. And then Bo Pribula. Those were their top three options in the transfer portal. They wanted to get one of the three. They missed out on Miller Moss. He decided to go to Louisville. They were in on the other two. And Bo Pribula said, I want to be a Missouri Tiger. And they didn't have a willingness to say, no, we're going to wait on Fernando Mendoza. So they decided to take him. It's a good get, man. I don't know what this is going to look like. His upside is real. This guy is a really good runner. I think the offense is going to have to change in a meaningful way. I don't know that he can be the facilitator that maybe they were hoping to get with like a Miller Moss. Like I don't know that the passing game is going to evolve in some crazy way compared to what it was a year ago. I think if you're looking for a comparison, I think he's pretty similar to Brady Cook.
Son of a... We just had that.
With more athleticism?
Healthy Brady Cook.
Okay.
I think a healthy Brady Cook is kind of where the expectation is. And if he becomes more, great. But I think that's kind of where you're at. Alex, what'd you think when you saw the news yesterday? Missouri got their quarterback. They now know where they stand.
It's a lot more excited until you said Brady Cook's name. Come on, man. Look, I think it's great for Mizzou because he was one of the top names available in the portal, and that's all you need to know with this. For the other teams that were trying to get Pribula on their roster, the fact that Mizzou came out on top, and look, Miller Moss, I think, was probably the number one target for a lot of people, mostly because that throwing arm is a little bit more lethal than what Pribula is. But if you're telling me that it's a quarterback that is lethal with his legs, can make plays, done it at Penn State a couple of times, then you adjust your offense slightly a little bit. For a guy like this, who you're bringing into your system, correct me if I'm wrong, this is about 3 years of this player you would have? 2? Okay, so you get 2 years of this as your quarterback. That's big for Mizzou. Would I have liked them to hold out for Mendoza? I mean, you tell me 6'5", 225-pound quarterback that could heave the ball? Absolutely.
He's got potential to be an NFL guy. I'm not sure about Pribula is that,
But you know what happens when you wait for the NFL guy? You're left without a paddle. And you cannot afford to do that if you're Mizzou, especially if you need to keep yourself in the conversation. So if this is the next best thing, is this my consolation trophy? I'm in.
There is the element, obviously, of the unknown. There's the element of somebody who's been used almost exclusively to this point as a change of pace option. But at the same time, I'm really tantalized because, BK, you mentioned it. Obviously, they integrated a lot of special packages on a Monday. Yes, for Pribula this past season, he did see the field for 187 snaps. And when he was pressed into duty in that game versus Wisconsin, a game in which, mind you, Penn State was actually trailing at the half when Aller went down. The limited stretches we have seen, he has been able to actually run with the gig. And yeah, you're going to have to modify the offense to a degree. But as far as upside is concerned, it is not solely a bridge option in this instance because you have real depth at the position looking ahead already to 2026 as well when Zollers will be in the mix as a redshirt freshman.
10 touchdowns, Alex, on 94 career rushing attempts. Pretty good. Pretty darn good. He averages more than 6 yards per carry, and that includes sacks. The college numbers will include sacks in there. So he's He's a really good runner. There's no avoiding that. It's the throwing that we just don't know yet. And that doesn't mean that it's bad. We just haven't seen a whole lot of it yet in his career. He has 56 career passing attempts at the collegiate level. So he is more of a runner than a thrower thus far. Missouri has their answer at the quarterback position. It is Bo Pribula. If you missed the conversation earlier today, Gabe DeArmond of PowerMizzou.com was on with TMA. He had a little bit more information on that if you're a Missouri fan and you are interested. Feel free to get involved in the show. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to do so. Check us out on YouTube, as always, at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. The studio cams are always powered by the Air Alliance team. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we'll get into some NFL quick hitters from the weekend that was, including Atlanta benching their quarterback in the midst of a playoff race, and now it sounds like he may never play again in the NFL. We'll talk about what that means for Kirk Cousins, talk about some of the other big storylines from the NFL this weekend. That's in 15 minutes. But next, Paul Goldschmidt, the end of his era here in St. Louis. How is he going to be remembered by Cardinals fans, and what does that legacy say about the way that we judge our favorite Cardinals players? Talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
St. Louis Blues hockey can be heard exclusively on 101 ESPN. Get the info you need before and after every Blues game with a First Community pre- and post-game show.
First Community Credit Union, calling St. Louis home for 90 years and powered by Scott Lee Heating Company.
This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
Paul Goldschmidt is done here in St. Louis, Alex. It was a pretty good 6 years. Had one excellent season back in 2022 in which he won the MVP. Cardinals looked like a team that had a real shot to be able to do something in the postseason around him. But otherwise, it was good, but maybe not quite as great as what we were all hoping for. With Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. We've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Your Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. I would be curious about how Cardinals fans feel on this. When you think about the Paul Goldschmidt era, Alex, how will you remember him? He's 30% above league average offensively, one of the best defensive first basemen in Major League Baseball, finished top 6 in the MVP voting twice, won a Gold Glove. How will you remember the Paul Goldschmidt era here in St. Louis?
I'm going to remember it as another Hall of Famer playing for the Cardinals, and a hell of a trade by the Cardinals, because at the time, I mean, we went through the ringer in terms of Jose Martinez as a first baseman, Matt Carpenter as a first baseman. They brought in Brandon Moss as a first base. There was a lot of first basemen in this organization beyond Albert Pujols, and you were thinking like, oh, geez. And then you make a trade for a 30-year-old first baseman, just like not like ready to retire, but it's on the other side of his incredible career in the Arizona Diamondbacks. And so you're wondering, what's this going to look like? And what it looked like, he got MVP votes the first 4 seasons. He wins the MVP vote. You had a roster that probably should have pushed for a World Series. It didn't. I don't think that's Paul Goldschmidt's fault. I think that's more the organization's fault, not putting a competent roster around him. But, I mean, this is a hell of a player that came in, brought in the power, brought in the consistency defensively at first base, was Gold Glove-esque at first base. You had the bat. I mean, this is exactly what the Cardinals needed to do when they made that trade, and they brought in an accomplished hitter. So I'm going to remember this fondly. Not that I've never seen an MVP caliber season, because Pujols did it. I don't remember them in terms of from start to finish. Sure. I'm going to remember this Paul Goldschmidt one from start to finish and how dominant he was.
Underwhelming would be the way that I would describe it. And that's totally unfair to Paul Goldschmidt, because for 5 seasons, he was one of the best first basemen in Major League Baseball. It's wildly unfair. But it's the reality of being a star here in St. Louis. If you don't have postseason success with the team, you're not going to be remembered as an all-time great here. It's just not how it works. Like, think about the way that players from the 2006 and 2011 teams here in St. Louis, for our generation, Alex, are remembered. Or for older fans, the guys in the 80s, think about how they are remembered. And now think about how some of the best players that played for your team in the 90s or since 2012 are remembered. It's different. It's different for Matt Carpenter than it was for, I don't know, Scott Rowland. It's different for Paul Goldschmidt than it was for even guys that had postseason success like a Carlos Beltran. Like, it's just different. And I think there's a lesson to be learned here, and maybe I'm the only one that needed to learn it. Maybe you guys have known this all along. But Paul Goldschmidt won an MVP here in St. Louis. He's one of 2 guys to do that in the last 35 years. Before that, you have to go all the way back to Willie. It's Albert and Goldy. And it's not remembered that way. He's not anywhere close to what Albert was here in St. Louis. And part of that is because of the longevity, of course. But a big part of it is because of the lack of postseason success. And so looking forward, I'm really curious about this, of how that changes the way that fans will view guys like Brendan Donovan or Mason Wynn or Wilson Contreras or Von Herrera if he reaches his ceiling, or eventually J.J. Weatherholt or whoever they draft in this year's draft. Like, those guys that end up having really solid major league careers, maybe play for the Cardinals for a decade plus, but never have that pinnacle of success in the postseason. I think it really changes the way you're remembered here in St. Louis. And that's how I feel about Paul Goldschmidt. Is he's an all-time great player. I believe he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I think he's going to have a decent amount of success next year in New York. I think he's got a chance for that. And yet here in St. Louis, I think it's going to be remembered as an underwhelming era for the Cardinals because of the lack of postseason success.
Yeah, and that's where, I mean, you asked me, and I think that's where it differs, because I do agree Cardinals fans are going to feel very disappointed in Paul Goldschmidt's time in St. Louis. And again, I don't know if that's going to be directed towards Goldschmidt, although he was inconsistent in the playoffs, as much as it's going to be directed towards the Cardinals not pouncing on the opportunity when you had Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado both performing at a higher level than what they've been these last couple of years. People will forget Paul Goldschmidt's time in St. Louis. They'll remember that he was a Cardinal, but they will forget those 3 or 4 years where he was a 30 home run guy, 100
They'll
RBI.
remember the MVP year. That's the one that I think will be tough to forget because he was special. But the thing that's funny about that, ironic, I guess, about that MVP season is it ended so poorly.
Well, that's why it feels like it's one of those things where it's going to be like a trivia question. Be like, the last Cardinals first baseman to win an MVP was who? I feel like people are going to go immediately to Albert Pujols. Some might be like, no, Paul Goldschmidt. Oh yeah, Paul Goldschmidt did it. Like that's what that season felt like. And again, he was bad that last month. There's no question.
Terrible.
But I don't know if people are as upset with Paul Goldschmidt not living up to expectations as they are upset that the Cardinals didn't put a good enough roster around Paul Goldschmidt to live up to expectations.
That seems to be the most common text that we're getting. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved. From the 217, Goldy will always go down as one of my favorite Cardinals. What the management in St. Louis did to him was shameful. Another one from the 314. Guys, I blame the organization for failing Goldy, not Paul Goldschmidt for not living up to expectations. I'm not telling anybody how they need to feel about him, but this is how I feel about the situation. I don't think Goldy came through often enough for me to feel bad for him for what the Cardinals organization did to him.
You're not wrong.
In the postseason, eventually, him and Arenado had to come through, and they just flat out didn't, man. They had every opportunity. I remember specifically the series against the Phillies, where they came up to the plate. God, I think it had to have been like 6 or 7 different times with the runners on, and not a once did they come through. Not once, man. And I believe it was Arenado who hit the ball really hard. He just had some really bad luck in the series. We're just unfortunate. Goldy just had a terrible series.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm looking. So you take away the wild card one where it was one game against the Dodgers. Of the 4 playoff series that he was like a part of, he had a sub 200 OPS. Like he had 2 playoff series, the one in 2019 against the Washington Nationals, and then that wild card round against the Phillies.
He basically had one good series in his postseason career here, and it was against Atlanta.
Yeah.
After that Atlanta series, so starting in the 2019 NLCS and beyond, Paul Goldschmidt was a part of 10 games. He went 5 for 39 with 16 strikeouts. That's an OPS of 515, a batting average of 128. Goldy has nobody to blame but himself, man.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds harsh, and Goldy was a really good regular season career over his time here in St. Louis. But ultimately, those 10 games are what you're judged on here in St. Louis, and he didn't come through. And that's the way that you're judged as a Cardinal, is whether or not you were able to come through in the biggest possible moments in the clutch for the Cardinals. And unfortunately, he didn't. That's going to be a part of his legacy, whether people want to like it or not. That's just a big part of it. All right. Next thing I wanted to get to, Alex, we have seen a little bit of movement in the pitching market over the last 24 hours. Sean Manaea signed with the New York Mets, a 3-year deal. I couldn't believe this one. $75 million for Sean Manaea, who a year ago we were talking about, and people were like, I don't know, BK. Is that really the upgrade you're looking for? He's now going to get $75 million guaranteed to him. Earlier today, your guy Walker Buehler signed with the Boston Red Sox, a 1-year deal worth just over the qualifying offer. $21 million is what he's going to be getting from Boston. Alex, my big take at the beginning of the offseason for the Cardinals was this is the market they've got to avoid in future seasons. They have now been priced out, I believe, in the mid-tier pitching market. Guys like Kyle Gibson, like the older version of Kyle Gibson, they're now going to start getting $18, $19 million a season. The guys that are upside plays, I mean, Sonny Gray now is a steal at his current salary. Those top of the market players are going to get $30+ million a year on multi-year deals, even when they're over the age of 30. Like this pitching market is getting crazier and crazier as we go because of the lack of supply. Nobody has it, and so they've got to pay desperately for it now.
I had 2 trains of thoughts when you started to see these contracts thrown out there. One, you're right, like developing these guys like Andre Palante into a really good 2 or 3 starter where you've got that salary under control. You've got a lot of guys in your system that could be playing for that in terms of McGreevy, Graceffo, Tink Hence, Quinn Matthews. Like, these are the guys you've got to develop to be a part of that high end of your rotation, so you're not having to go spend $30 30 plus. You'll have to pay him at some point, but at least you get those controllable years. My other thought was, man, I don't know if I would be done scouring the market if I'm the Cardinals in terms of trades. Like, I know you're going to have to go out and pay if you go trade somebody, but man, for what some of these guys are getting traded for, you can't tell me you can get a hell of a return for an Eric Fetty for what he is going to cost you in terms of, like, do I want to go give a guy 3 years and $75 million who maybe at best will be a 4 or 3 for us? Or do I go out there and trade a couple of prospects that I don't really care about and go get somebody who's under control for one more year at a really cheap cost?
Also, as a reminder of what Fetty's going to get on the market. Like next year.
Which the Cardinals won't pay.
Right. Next year, if Fetty has a similar season to what he had a year ago, he's going to get $15 to $20 million a year. I know the Fast Lane laughed at us when we said that a couple of weeks ago, but guys, this is the market now.
Yep.
If Sean Manaea is getting that, who was not a very good starter basically up until the second half of last season, and then something clicked, changed his arm slot, and became pretty dominant for the second half. He has half a season of that. Had some prospect pedigree similar to Fetty, and now he's getting 25 a year in his mid-30s. That is almost an exact corollary to what Eric Fetty is at this point in his career. They're different styles of pitcher, but I think this offseason would be a time when I would be wanting to get the biggest possible return for Fetty.
Yeah.
I'm in on their plan to hold on to Helsley. I get it. It makes sense to me. I understand it is definitely controversial, and it does not come without risk. But that one I understand because I do think there's going to be a huge demand for him at the deadline. We do not see these starters typically go for a ton at the deadline, which saw last year where the Cardinals were able to acquire Fetty basically for a position player that was hurt all season long in Tommy Edman. I think that now's the time to capitalize on him. I would be looking to do that as soon as possible. And I think Steven Matz probably has some value in this market as well.
Yep.
If you're seeing Walker Buehler go for this, and he's not Walker Buehler, but Buehler just got $21 million attached to a QO, if I'm not mistaken, right? Mm-hmm. Didn't he have draft pick compensation attached to him? If he's getting that, Steven Matz should have some pretty decent value on this year's market as well. So the Cardinals are in a pretty decent spot if they want to go that direction. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get to questions and answers. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for those questions. But coming up next is NFL Quick Hitters. Kirk Cousins benched. They went to their rookie quarterback. Have we seen the end of Kirk Cousins' NFL career? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Coverage of 101 ESPN is presented by Onder Law Injury Lawyers. GetJim.com.
I love talking about Classic Air Care, a company that has been taking care of my family with the HVAC system since 2016 when I purchased my first home. Classic Air Care, they've been making people comfortable since 1926, and it's one of these things that's just been in my family. My dad has been using Classic Air Care for the longest time because of the maintenance agreement that we're a part of. That's maintaining our older unit, coming out, cleaning it twice a year, and when there's issues that pop up, you give them a call. You're at the top of the priority list, so they get out there fast, and they fix whatever problem that you have. Maybe it's not an older unit. Maybe you're in the market for purchasing a new unit, and that's where you need to call Classic Air Care, because before the end of the year, you're going to still get the prices before they hike up with some of the government regulations that'll be coming out on these new HVAC systems. Classic Air Care is saying it's about 10 to 15% more expensive than what they are right now. So that starts on January 1st, so you still got a little bit of time to call Classic Air Care and have them come out. Also, you got a little bit of time to use Classic Air Care to help out with those electric company rebates at the end of the year. Classic Air Care can leverage some of those rebates for you now before they are gone. So give them a call today. Tell them Alex Ferrario sent you, or schedule online at classicaircare.com.
It's an NFL Christmas doubleheader. Game 1, Chiefs and Steelers. Game 2, Texas and Ravens. Coverage starts Wednesday morning at 11. Your destination for the NFL in St. Louis is 101 ESPN. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
MU gets its guy at QB. Good morning, I'm Bradford Bruns with your Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Last night, Mizzou landed another major portal prize. Bo Pribula, who served as Penn State's backup signal caller the past 2 seasons, is now Columbia bound. He has multiple years of eligibility remaining. Yesterday afternoon, not as kind to Den Skates and company. Tigers fall downtown against Illinois 80-77. Jim Montgomery's Blues also targeting a better outcome. They've lost 3 straight, entering this evening's bout versus Detroit. Puck drop happens right here after 6 on 101 ESPN. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
Let's dive into some NFL quick hitters with Alex and Bradford Bruns. I'm Brandon Kiley. Let's start out with the big news going into the weekend, Alex, and that was that Kirk Cousins has been benched. I was impressed by what we saw yesterday from Michael Penix. Now, he didn't have to do a whole lot because the Giants are atrocious, and they just basically had to run the ball all day, and they knew they would be able to win that way. But he did not take a sack, had no turnover-worthy plays, looked really comfortable as the quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. They now have a real chance to win the NFC South after the Bucs fumbled the game away last night, literally, against the Dallas Cowboys at the end there. Have we seen the end of Kirk Cousins as starting NFL quarterback, Alex? There was some reporting over the weekend that he's going to take some time after the season to decide if he wants to play again. There was also reporting that the Falcons are likely to release him this offseason instead of giving him the $10 million roster bonus. Do you think we've seen the end of Kirk Cousins, or do you expect him to be back with somebody next year in a similar capacity to Russell Wilson this year with the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I think we're going to see him back next year. We talked about this last week a little bit once the news came out that he was benched for Penix Jr., and I was like, man, who goes out there and brings in Kirk Cousins after this? I mean, he looked bad with Atlanta. I don't know another team that would sit there and be like, let's just give him a shot. And then I'm like, wait a minute, there's 2 disastrous teams in the AFC, the Jets and the Giants, that I could see doing this. I mean, he's going to get all of his money if they release him, so I would imagine you're not going to be paying him a whole lot.
It'll be similar to what happened with Russ this year. Like, there's no reason for him to try to make money elsewhere. He's getting all of it from the Falcons.
And if I'm the Jets or the Giants, like, if I'm Kirk, I got to decide if I want to go to that disastrous place. But if I'm the Jets or the Giants and I'm going to be drafting a quarterback and don't want to throw him into the fire right away, I could see Kirk Cousins getting an opportunity like that again. I don't know if it's going to be successful like Russell Wilson. Frankly, I don't think it will because they've got a great coach. But yeah, I don't think this is the end of Kirk Cousins because there's going to be teams that are willing to pay.
Is he finished as an NFL starter? For all intents and purposes, it would appear so. And it was striking yesterday, guys, the difference that you did see on offense. Amazing what happens in the ATL when you allow consistently Bijan Robinson to be the fulcrum of your offense, going from 1-4 over the previous 5 games to the output that we did see yesterday. I don't know, unless you're talking about a veteran-laden squad with a prove-it type of deal, I'm not sure that Cousins, despite the dire quarterback picture around the NFL, really gets that shot at being the number 1 again. I'm really skeptical.
There are 2 teams to me that make sense, and really 3 if you want to throw this third in. I'm just not sure what their plan is. Cleveland to me makes a lot of sense. They're stuck. They have no alternative. And if I can get a quarterback that I think is starting caliber for $1 million, I probably have to explore that. Now, being outdoors, playing in that city where the weather is going to be crap for half of the season, and then you're playing in Cincy, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh, all of which are outdoor stadiums, all in the Midwest to Northeast. I don't know if it's a great situation for him, but it's a winning club if they have the right quarterback in place. I think we learned that much at least this year. I just don't know that quarterback is there. I could see how if you squint hard enough, maybe they could talk themselves into Kirk Cousins being that guy. Tennessee makes all the sense in the world. They are looking for some kind of an answer at the position, and they clearly don't have one internally. It ain't Will Levis, and it's not Mason Rudolph. For $1 million, could they talk themselves into it being potentially Kirk Cousins? I could see it. Vegas is the other one that I just don't know what their plan is. If Vegas is going to be able to get their quarterback in this year's draft, whether that's Shedeur Sanders or one of the other guys that's declaring, cool, go ahead and do that. Dome, playing in Vegas, Tom Brady a part of it, I could see them maybe talking themselves into $1 million for a starting caliber quarterback. Give us an answer at the position, and then we'll see what happens in the draft. I could see them maybe going in that direction. So I do think he's going to start for somebody next year. I can't put my finger on exactly who it is, but those would be my top 3 candidates right now.
Yeah, I like the Titans one. The Titans one, I mean, they need a quarterback to at least kind of get them over the hump for a little bit. Vegas one's interesting, too. It just is going to be a matter of how fast do they want to integrate their new quarterback that they draft.
All right. Alex, I think there's a decent chance that we know today who all of the playoff teams are outside of 2 divisional winners. In the AFC, I think it's basically locked in. I'm curious if you disagree with this. I think the top 7 today will get into the postseason. Chiefs, Bills, Steelers, Texans. Those, as of today, are your divisional champs. And then your 3 wildcard teams, Ravens, Chargers, Broncos. Those teams are all 9-6 or better. The next best record in the AFC right now is a 3-way tie between the Colts, the Dolphins, and the Bengals, all at 7-8, all 2 games back of the final playoff spot right now in the AFC. There's 2 weeks left to play. Alex, as of today, do you think it's fair to say we've locked it in? We've got our 7 playoff teams in the AFC?
Yeah, I do. I mean, the only sliver of hope I would imagine if you're in the AFC are Bengals fans that hope you beat the Broncos and the Broncos lose out and the Bengals win out. But I don't even know if that puts them in the playoffs. I don't know the tiebreaker situation, but
they would have it head to head.
They would have it, so
because they beat the Broncos.
I think that's the only thing you're living on hopium with is the Cincinnati Bengals. But I'm with you. I think the Broncos at least win 1 more game, so that pretty much puts it to bed, and that's your AFC playoff battle.
Yeah, if only Cincinnati had righted the ship to a greater degree a few weeks ago. Winners of 3 straight, yeah, but it was just a few weeks ago when you were 4 games under 500, and nobody would want to encounter that team in the playoffs. Now even the defense, you're starting to see a bit more from the front 4 as far as the young linemen getting after it, but that time has passed. No matter how many heroics can be mustered by Joe Burrow, there's just not enough time. You can't make it up.
I'm in agreement. I would also say this. If the Chiefs win on Wednesday, they have locked up the AFC. They've locked up the number 1 seed. They can rest their starters in that final week of the regular season against the Broncos, and I can promise you, the Chiefs would love nothing more than to hand the Broncos that game to keep the Bengals out.
They're
going to
put an entire practice squad on the field for that game.
Because that would effectively eliminate the Bengals. If the Broncos win a game, Bengals are done.
Mm-hmm.
And if the Chiefs eliminate everybody else from the 1 seed on Wednesday when they play against the Pittsburgh Steelers on Christmas Day, boom, they don't have to play for anything in that final week of the regular season. They can rest their starters for 3 weeks, basically, until they get to the postseason, that divisional round, and they can eliminate the Bengals, give that spot to the Broncos. They would love nothing more than to do exactly that. I think we've got the AFC basically locked up at this point in time. All right, in the NFC, it gets a little bit more interesting. And I thought for most of the season that the NFC was better than the AFC, Alex. I'm not sure I feel that way now because of injuries, because of the way that things have turned around. The Lions' defense has been a sieve over the last few weeks. They can't stop anybody right now. The Eagles have their own passing game problems, and now Jalen Hurts is in the concussion protocol. They're a game back of the Lions. The Rams, can't score. I don't know what's going on. They have completely flipped their identity as a team now. The Falcons, as of today, are winning the NFC South, but the Bucs are right there with them. The Vikings are really good. They're 13-2, but as of today would be the 5 seed. Because the Lions have that number 1 seed. The Packers play tonight. They've got 4 losses on the season. They should beat what is a practice squad version of the New Orleans Saints. And then you've got the Commanders, who had one of the best wins of the day yesterday. Alex, how are you viewing this NFC field as of today after what we saw this week from these contenders, so to speak, in the NFC?
Man, it is a wide open field because I'm with you. I've loved the Lions all season. They have been my team, but I don't trust. They have to win playoff games by just scoring 50-plus points because there will be no defensive stops in this game unless miraculously everyone gets healthy. So that leaves the field wide open, but I don't trust the Eagles because of their throwing issues and with Jalen Hurts' concussion stuff. I legitimately think the Commanders might be a better team in the playoffs over an Eagles team, with the exception of Saquon Barkley. I don't trust the Rams because of what you just said, and frankly, the NFC South is a laugh. So does that leave the Vikings as the best team in the NFC right now? Because I really don't want to invest any stock into Sam Darnold.
I think it's the Packers. I've said it all along. I think the Packers are the team to beat in the NFC.
Which they are so inconsistent in terms of Jordan Love's great one game and Jordan Love's awful one game.
4 in a row, though. 4 in a row. Good balance.
They have lost to one team since week 4 of the NFL season, and it was the Lions. They've lost to one team. Other than that, they beat the Rams on the road 24-19. They beat the Texans on the road 24-22. They beat the San Francisco 49ers, which make of that what you will, 38-10. And then they beat Seattle 30-13 on the road last week. Like they have some pretty good wins on their resume. It's the division, and then that weird game in Brazil in week 1. It's a game against the Vikings and then the 2 losses against the Lions that have kept them down.
Yeah, with all due respect, honestly, to the Lions, and attrition has played a huge role in the defense not being able to be as proficient in recent weeks. If you're telling me these 2 teams could match up in the playoffs, wherever the setting, wherever that venue may be, I'm taking Jordan Love and I'm taking Josh Jacobs and that balance on offense. Plus, oh yes, Matt LaFleur any day of the week, because I'm still skeptical as well. I know that Goff in the cold yesterday, admittedly against Chicago, was terrific, but does his game travel in the same way of a Jordan Love? The wonderful thing about this is, who would have guessed that in week number 16, you would say Minnesota, yes, Alex, the team led by Sam Darnold, has an opportunity, has a clear path to the number 1 seed. Granted, you have to knock off Green Bay and Minnesota in the last 2 weeks of the season, but now looking extremely good in Philadelphia. For as much as we've talked about the melodrama in the locker room the last couple of weeks, now the 10-game winning streak is over. Now you have extreme concerns at quarterback, because if Hurts is compromised for any stretch, I'm sorry, Kenny Pickett, just hand it off to Barkley and pray.
Are you believing in the Vikings, Alex?
Am I believing in the Vikings?
I got a text from a buddy yesterday that said, I'm not sure that I'm there yet, but I'm ready to start buying in. And I said, nope, not doing it. I will not, cannot, have not, absolutely no.
True or false, it's because of Sam Darnold.
100%. Yep. And it's unfair. He's been good this year. But they're 13-2. Like I will give them the credit that they deserve, because they are a really good football team, really good team, and the receivers are amazing. The coaching, I think they're the best coached team in the NFL. Defensively, what Brian Flores has done with them is amazing. They are a really good team, and I do not trust Sam Darnold. Once we get to the best of the best, like starting in the divisional round, I do not trust them. So I'm not picking them in a postseason game, divisional round or beyond. It's unfair. They've been a good team. I want to give them the credit that they deserve. But yes, to answer your question, it is because of Sam Darnold. I think he's going to throw a game away.
And why I would say that at least I'm considering it is because of what you mentioned, the coaching. Kevin O'Connell is a genius. I can't deny that. And then Brian Flores, I mean, that is the stingiest defense right now in the National Football League. And I also can't deny that. So, like, I would not put money on them in one of my big Ferrario parlays, because that's the 10th team that blows it all up. But can I see them finding a way to win a couple of games? Probably, because of incredible coaching that they've got.
I could see them getting to the NFC Championship game. It wouldn't shock me. I just, in my mind, and I've got a little pea brain, but in my mind, I can't see the Minnesota Vikings with Sam Darnold at quarterback representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. It's just hard for me to
If Aaron Jones can stay healthy, it gives them a chance, because at least they have an option. If you lose the running game, then it's all on Sam Darnold, and that's where I'm out on it.
Speaking of quarterbacks and coaching, how dangerous could Washington be in the playoffs with the manner in which Daniels is playing? He was on fire yesterday. He's got 9 touchdowns over the span of the last 3 games alone. We talk about Darnold and how we don't necessarily have the confidence in him, and yet as a rookie, I'm not sure I would take many more options than Daniels right now.
I think he's great. I love him. I think he's fantastic. I told you guys last offseason, Alex, I would consider him as the number 1 overall pick. I thought he was that special as a collegiate player. I don't think that team's ready yet. Yeah, even yesterday, it took Jalen Hurts going out and the Philadelphia Eagles throwing that game away for them to have any chance to win it. And then last week, it was a really close game against New Orleans. Like, they're a fun team to watch. They're a good team. They are not great, and I do not think they are ready to be a true contender just yet.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think the quarterback has the ability to steal a football game in the playoffs because of what I've seen Jaden Daniels do in, like, crunch time. So I won't count them out, but I don't think they're ready to go on like a Detroit Lions-esque run like they did last year. I think this might be like a maybe win a game, and it's going to be off of miraculous play, and then after that, you get slapped back to reality.
He also had to account for 75% of the rushing yards yesterday.
Yeah, he is special, man. That guy is so much fun to watch. With Alex and Bradford on BK, questions and answers coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
Start your day with the morning after on 101 ESPN. Get in the know first on everything St. Louis sports with Tim McKernan, Doug Vaughn, and Martin Kilcoy. Listen to TMA weekday mornings from 7 to 11 a.m. on 101 ESPN. The morning after is presented by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm. TMA, then nominate yourself to be the Morning After Listener of the Month. Sign up now at 101ESPN.com or TMASTL.com.
The TMA Listener of the Month Club is quenched by Milagro Tequila. Welcome to a brighter side of tequila with Milagro Tequila.
Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN. You've got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. Questions and answers on 101 ESPN.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 314. Guys, Chris Kreider is a healthy scratch today. Mainly BK. I guess Alex could answer this too.
Whoa, shots.
Question says, should the Blues be making the call? Alex?
It said mainly BK. I don't know why they said mainly BK.
Right.
They know what the answer is.
This is complicated, obviously. He's 33 years old. He's going to be 34 next year. He's got 3 years remaining, including this season on his contract at $6.5 million per season. It's not an easy thing to make work. You already just got Fowler in here. I was gone when that move was made, but they just added a bloated contract, a couple of years left for a 30-plus-year-old player. So it's not an easy thing to just go double down on that while you're in the midst of a retool. However, you guys know how I feel about Chris Kreider if you've listened to this show for, I don't know, more than a day. So would I do it? In certain scenarios, yeah. If you find out that Brandon Saad would be willing to waive his no-trade clause to go to New York, that is step one that has to take place. Because then that offsets $4.5 million of the contract for Kreider for the next couple of seasons. And then it's really just that 1 year you got to deal with. If I'm the Blues, I don't think the Rangers want Chris Kreider around. I think they're trying to offload all of their assets at this point. So I'm going to ask them to eat a couple $1 million on that deal for each of the next 3 seasons. So now I get Chris Kreider about $4.5 million. I've got a top 6 forward, even if you don't think at this point in his career he's a top line winger, which I think he probably is. You have improved your power play, which is desperate right now for some kind of an improvement. I'd be willing to give up some draft picks, and now the money's not that bad. So would I do it? Yeah, but it takes a lot of moving pieces. The first step, again, Brandon Saad have to waive his no-trade clause to go to New York. New York would have to want him in return in this kind of a deal, take on that contract, and then you've got to make the draft pick compensation work. But yeah, I'd be willing to do it.
I would have to really think about it. I mean, you're not wrong. Kreider fixes your power play massively. He's a goal scorer. He's a power forward. He's everything you would need in a top 6, top 9 forward. But it goes against what the Blues have been talking about in terms of blocking a spot for a player next year. Like, I'm looking at this combo in the world that you trade Brandon Saad for Chris Kreider. Your top line in an ideal world, Buchnevich, Thomas, Holloway, Kreider, Dvorsky, Kyrou, Neighbors, Shen, Bolduc. Where's Snuggerud? And maybe he's not ready. Maybe he's in the AHL next year. But I got to imagine if a kid coming out of college is going to sign a contract, he's playing in the NHL. Is somebody in the minors? Are you trading somebody for Chris Kreider? I don't know if that makes sense for the Blues. And if I look at that, like, who are they getting rid of to open up another spot? Like, you got Chris Kreider here, you moved on from Brandon Saad, but are you in the same problem that you were with Saad now with Chris Kreider for 2 more years?
And this is where the Blues, it gets really tricky for them, is making their decisions. Now you mentioned this, Army mentioned this before the season. We're no longer in asset accumulation mode. Now we are in let's find out what we have mode. And they have to make decisions. What is the future for Zach Bolduc? What is the future for Jimmy Snuggerud? How do they fit into the mix? What is Jake Neighbors long-term for us? Is he a third-line winger? Is he a top-line winger? Where does Dylan Holloway fit into all of this? Do we still view Jordan Kyrou as a legit top 6 winger on a contending version of the St. Louis Blues? Like, all of these things are going to have to be answered for them. My main takeaway from this is, like, it really depends on how much they want to win this year. If they really value winning in 2024-25, if that is the stated goal, I don't think you can do it with this version of the club.
Yeah.
I don't think you can make the playoffs without adding one more winger. Now, that doesn't have to be Chris Kreider, but I do think that is something that has to be under consideration is how do we improve in that specific area? Because Dvorsky, I think, is going to be ready at some point this year. It feels like that is the case. Now you're missing a winger. And if you can find that guy on the market, I think it might be worth going out there and making that addition. All right, from the 314, guys, do you think Josh Allen has the MVP locked up this season? And if so, why is Lamar Jackson not getting more conversation? He has better stats and beat him head-to-head. I do think he has the MVP locked up, and I think he's deserving. I don't think there's a, runaway candidate this season. I don't think anybody is, this is not a 2018 Mahomes kind of a season, or even the first Lamar Jackson MVP season, where it was just so clear and overwhelming that nobody else was even deserving of consideration. But Josh Allen has put together a really good season on one of the best teams in the NFL, and he's done it without the weapons that he had a year ago. And typically when you see stuff like that, that's the guy that ends up winning the MVP. I think he's put together a deserving season.
Yeah, I do too. And I don't really know how to answer the question of why not Lamar Jackson, other than looking at it and saying because the Bills have a shot to be the best team in the AFC, although Kansas City's pretty much locked that up. But we're talking about a 13 or 14 win team versus a 11 or 12 win team. And I know that sucks, and I know that's not a reason for an MVP because both have really impressive numbers. But Josh Allen doing that with a Bills team that I think a lot of people thought were a fringe playoff team is deserving of the MVP.
Yeah, one pedestrian-ish showing against the Patriots isn't going to change my vote. I can't believe I'm really saying this, but dare we say that, quite frankly, Josh Allen, this season at least, has been able to do more with less. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Cook in the backfield for Buffalo, but being able to lean on Derrick Henry, too, obviously, it's going to make things a little easier for Jackson. The passing numbers are tremendous, but just given how ridiculous that offense has been yesterday, finally, guys, Buffalo was prevented from scoring 30 in a game for the first time in the last 9 contests. This team is just doing more than we have seen in quite some time. Allen, it's his time. He's been transformational.
Also, Lamar's putting up rushing numbers, but total touchdowns. Lamar Jackson this year, 37 throwing, only 3 rushing, interestingly enough. So 40 total touchdowns on the season. Josh Allen has 11 rushing touchdowns on the year, 37 total touchdowns for him. So
on top of James Cook's 14 rushing touchdowns.
I think that I know they lost head-to-head, but the Bills, I believe, are a better team this season. I think Josh Allen is putting together the better season than Lamar. I would give the award to Josh Allen. With Alex and Bradford, I'm BK. Coming up next, the Cardinals had a really interesting way of viewing what their season needs to be in 2025. Ollie Marmol was quoted yesterday by Derek Gold in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch on what their primary goal is for this upcoming season. I want to read this to you guys and get your perspective on if you would consider this to be a success. We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Jamie Rivers here, and this is my latest jersey giveaway of the season. It is a signed Jordan Binnington Winter Classic jersey, the OG, the original from the very first one at Busch Stadium. It is awesome. We all love that baby blue, and you look great wearing it too. Get entered to win that autographed Binner jersey right now at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app. Winner must be 21 or older. Jersey giveaway is refreshed by Bud Light. Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy.
Alex, the college football playoff is down to just 8 teams remaining, and that means that it is time to place your wagers on who you think is going to win the championship this year. I've got 4 teams that I think have the best chance, Alex, to be able to do so. It's Georgia, Penn State, Texas, Ohio State. They've all got better odds if you bet on them over on Circa than if you made the exact same bet on FanDuel Sportsbook. Georgia 6-1 on Circa, plus 480 on FanDuel. Penn State 5.5-1 on Circa, 5-1 over on FanDuel. Texas is plus 335 on Circa, plus 310 over on FanDuel. And Ohio State plus 340 on Circa. And if you made the exact same bet over on FanDuel, it's plus 330. You're winning more money when you bet over on Circa.
This is why we urge you to download the app, get it for all of your sports betting needs for the football games coming up this week, college and NFL, and hell, maybe throw a little hockey parlay together for tonight, because I like the Blues on the money line and I like Robert Thomas to score a goal. You do that bet on Circa Sports Illinois, plus 450. You do it anywhere else, plus 375. Download the app today and get it for your needs. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
WXOS, WXOS HD1 East St. Louis. 101 ESPN is driven by Auto Centers Nissan, home of the lifetime warranty and 30-day return. We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
Alex, I was reading the St. Louis Post-Dispatch yesterday, and Derek Gould had a really good story. He quoted Ollie Marmol on what the expectations are about the Cardinals next season, and I found this quote to be revealing. He said the following, quote, "If I were to sit here and ask you, what is Ivan Herrera? I think we would all have varying responses to that question. That's the whole point of it. At the end of this year, we will know what we have in Herrera. Gosh, we'll know what we have in Walker, Nootbaar. You go down the list, just get them at bats, let them pitch, let them play. And there's more clarity as to what we have on our hands rather than guessing. So that's a big part of how we will measure this thing as well," end quote. Again, that is an Ollie Marmol quote to Derek Gould yesterday in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Alex, as I thought about that quote, it stuck with me a little bit. I was thinking to myself, okay, so let's get to the end of the year. Let's go down this hypothetical path together. Ivan Herrera's 15% above league average offensively. Good season, not great. Ends up being an above league average hitter, but maybe still leaves a little bit to be desired with what he is behind the plate. He's more of a backup catcher, nice hitting option, 1 out of every 3 days, than a true everyday catching option. Lars Nootbaar, you get to the end of the season, and he's kind of what he's been, but he stayed healthy for the entirety of the season this year. So an above-league average hitter, good defensive outfielder. You like what he brings in the clubhouse, and good base runner, all these different things. Just a good all-around player, but not a star, just a good player. Jordan Walker, you get to the end of the season, you're like, okay, took some steps here, capable defensively, hit 260, got 20 home runs out of him. It's a solid season out of Jordan Walker as well. Gorman has a bunch of strikeouts in his game, but he hit 32 home runs. Okay, cool. We've got something there. You get some positive returns on the team, but they win 82 games. They're just solid, kind of all around. The reason why I bring this up is because I do wonder, do the results have to be legitimately good in order for this to be considered a success, what they're trying to accomplish in 2025? Or can you get these results and you just have information and that be considered what is a success from the 2025 season? Because to me, I'm okay with the latter. If they just take whatever the information is that is now available to them because they finally find out what they have in all of these young players, they get to the end of the year and now it's decision time. We got to bleep or get off the pot with some of these guys. What is Lars Nootbaar? Okay, we now know. Let's decide if that's a player we're building around. What is Jordan Walker? Let's give him 500 at-bats. Let's find out together. And if he's not going to be a star this year, if we don't see the potential there, we need to find a star. We need to accumulate a star somehow. What is Nolan Gorman? If he's going to have this massive hole in his swing and he's probably going to be nothing more than a 6-hole hitter in his career, cool. We can decide how to value that if it is something that we want long-term and adjust accordingly. That, to me, just having that information is good enough for this season to be considered a success. Would you view it that way, though? Because I have to imagine there's a decent number of Cardinals fans that would say, no, BK, what you just described is a failure because you didn't come out of the season with good results. It's about the results, not just getting that information.
That's not where I lie at all. I don't think results matter this season. And if you don't believe me, check out the whole 17 press conferences that were held. This isn't a results-based season. This is a what do we have in our system season. And frankly, it's kind of an I don't know answer if that's considered a success or not. And I wonder if a lot of Cardinals fans feel that way because they don't know who Chaim Bloom is. It seems like Chaim Bloom is a little John Mozeliak-esque, but is he fully John Mozeliak-esque? And what I mean by that is 5 years ago, if they'd be doing the same thing and you would have said that to me, I would have said that's a failure. Because now you have answers on guys, and I still don't believe they'll move on from those players if they have answers.
You want an example of that?
Yeah, please.
Remember the pitching 2 years ago?
I do.
Where you got Matthew Liberatore and Zach Thompson and Andre Palante and all those young guys were thrown into the rotation. You guys remember this, right? And then they came back the next year and they were like, okay, we got to get all of these veterans. We're going to use these veterans to stopgap. Guess who those pitchers are? Michael McGreevy was in that group. Guess who those pitchers are now this year that are going to get the opportunity to start again?
Who?
It's the same group of pitchers that was in there 2 years ago. So that's the example to what you're talking about.
So,
they got information, just not quite enough information or the right answers that they were looking for, and then they just had a stopgap year in between.
And that's my concern if it was pre. But now with Chaim Bloom, and I do really wonder if the emphasis is we've got to see what we've got in these players so that I can make adjustments as I'm putting this roster together. So I consider this a success. If in the Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman terms, that to me is an improvement because I've seen a full 162 without any question marks of if you're struggling, you're coming out of the lineup. You're going to stick and you're going to play, and now you could build off of that. Those other guys, I think it's important to finally get answers on. So you don't keep sitting there and saying, yeah, but Lars Nootbaar, if he plays a full season, look at what he could be. Or if Ivan Herrera, if he gets those reps behind the plate, look at what he could be. You're getting all of these answers this season, and then you adjust forward. And why I kind of fell into that I don't know frame is I just don't know if they're willing to move off of these guys if they finally get their answers on them.
I think you can be disappointed in the individual results that actually come out of the 2025 season, if that makes sense. But collectively, being able to plug those guys in and ride with them for a full 162, that's what so many of us have been wanting, have been desiring, right, for the last couple of seasons. So if you were truly committing to that, to actually giving all of the young players that extended run, then that first and foremost, that trumps anything else. Whether you're talking about the standings, whether you're talking about the overall numbers, being able to see that day in and day out is what you must see. And then, Alex, as you said, you just have to pivot off of that accordingly.
I think what gets really hard is when you have players that show you potential of being what you want them to be, but it's not quite all the way there, and then deciding, okay, is that coming? What is on the horizon? What is the level of production that you need to see in order to decide, okay, this guy's going to be exactly what we need him to be in this specific role next year? What is the timeline for these things? And the reason why I bring this up, Alex, is because, I'll go with Kyle Tucker as an example, right? Kyle Tucker's a really, really good player. He's probably going to get $400 million on the open market next offseason. He was just traded this year to the Cubs. And over the last 4 seasons, he's one of the most productive hitters in Major League Baseball. Can I read you his stats from his first 2 opportunities in the big leagues? Now, these were incredibly limited opportunities. In his first full season in the big leagues, he had a 900 OPS. So it's not a totally fair example 1-to-1, but I want to get this out there. So in his first 2 opportunities at the big league level, he was 22 and 23 years old. He had an 850 and an 830 OPS. That's really good, but it was about 20% above league average offensively. In other words, it's like Brendan Donovan or Lars Nootbaar. And then he broke out and had a 47% above league average season. And it's like, okay, wow, this guy might be a star. And then it just never stopped. He just became that player long term. There are dozens of examples of players like that came in, were above average, and then eventually developed into a potential superstar. There are a lot of other guys that came in, were just slightly above league average, and then never took that next step. Would you consider Ozzie Albies to be a star?
I would, yeah.
Yeah, fringe star.
Ozzie Albies in his major league career is 8% above league average offensively. And that's where this stuff just becomes really difficult to parse out. Ozzie Albies hits 25-ish home runs per season, maybe 30 in an offseason. Like, if the reason why I ask that is because if Jordan Walker ended up having a similar major league career, they're incredibly different players. I want to put that out there. But offensively, if Jordan Walker had a similar major league career offensively to Ozzie Albies, would we consider that a success? Because you just said he's a star. And so if Jordan Walker, if I asked you if Jordan Walker becomes a star, would we consider that a success? The answer is yes. If Jordan Walker has a similar offensive output to Ozzie Albies, who we consider to be a star, would that be considered a success? The answer is I don't know for me.
I mean, if you're asking me, yes, because from what I've seen in the first few seasons, I don't even know if he's going to get to Ozzie Albies. So if you get to Ozzie Albies, yeah, I will take that. The reason Ozzie Albies isn't to that next level is because he plays with freaking Ronald Acuna Jr. and why am I blanking on the third baseman's name?
Austin Riley.
Austin Riley, thank you. It was like Alex Tucker for some reason. So, like, that's like if Ozzie Albies was just on a team without those two guys, I think we would be talking to him as a star.
But offensively, he hasn't been that.
I totally agree with you. But I don't know what, like, Jordan Walker, I have not seen. And if you're going to give me that, I'll take it because I'm worried that he doesn't even get there.
Ozzie Albies, he has been an all-star. Granted, he has been a productive performer in a deep Atlanta lineup.
Absolutely.
But it's all relative because I'm still hanging on to more than a shred of that narrative of what was put out for us and categorized a few seasons ago. The Cardinals brass themselves put out that particular inkling, that notion that Jordan Walker could be generational.
Oh,
he could be transformational. So until proven, well, very well. But let's just see what you were able to actually accomplish a couple of years later with a full 162 and then go from there. Now, I'm not going to pretend that he's going to reach the gargantuan heights that everybody had prescribed for him a couple of seasons ago. But it is a bit of apples to oranges here because with all due respect, the people, the camp, the Atlanta organization, you weren't exactly hearing Pujols-esque comps with respect to Ozzie Albies. I know it's a different situation, but they set the expectations in this regard. So we shall see.
I think we just didn't hear him. He was top 10 prospect in Major League Baseball.
He was great. He was great.
He's had real expectations coming in, and they expected a lot out of him. And
he's been injured too. Like you take those two of the last 3 seasons, he's played 60 and 90 games. So like that, the numbers also don't show these injuries that he's been out for.
But before that, OPS plus wise, just like based on league averages, right? 101, 113, 100, 108. 126. I excluded the 2 years that you were talking about because those were down years. He was hurt in those 2 seasons. I'll write them off completely. He's like, I don't know what you're hoping Thomas Ajayce is going to be in terms of the offensive production other than one outlier season in 2023 where he was awesome and had an 850 OPS. Otherwise, though, he's mostly been like 10% above league average offensively in his major league career. So I don't know if Cardinals fans end up getting that kind of production out of Walker. I hope they're happy with it. I don't know though. Like if I told you right now, you could set in stone, Alex, 40 doubles and 25 home runs this year for Walker. We're all signing up for that, right?
Yeah, I am.
Because that's Albies. Albies is more of a hit for power than hit for average / on base.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately that's what it's going to come down to is he's got to have those accounting stats.
I think the reason people are going to be with Ozzie Albies comp for Walker is because it doesn't solve the problem that you're still searching for.
A superstar.
Yeah, I mean, but guess what, guys? Like, we've been saying that for the longest time. Hey, Cardinals, this is not an easy problem to solve just through the draft. Now, the good news is you're drafting 4th overall. You just took J.J. Weatherholt. Maybe you could strike gold with one of those guys. But these players, you just don't develop them. And I know that the expectations were put on Jordan Walker, but like you also have to be realistic at times. So it doesn't solve your problem, Cardinals. This refresh might take you another year if he's not a superstar.
And they profile as completely different hitters, the respective makeups in the box, too.
Totally.
Whereas,
one's like 5'7".
Exactly. You've got
6'7".
Albies, but the approach is such that you do have more of that tendency to basically swing for the fences, whereas Walker, despite the build, obviously, despite the physical construction, profiles as more of that line drive guy at this point in time. How does he evolve? Does he go back to some of the tendencies that we saw as a rookie? Does he actually buy into what the Cardinals brass was instructing, saying for him? It is still a mystery. It's an enigma.
All right, we'll get back into the Cardinals coming up at the 1 o'clock hour. If you guys want to get involved, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to do so. And coming up next, we will get some from the audience. We have a segment called In or Out. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are in or out on BK and Ferrario.
It's time for another moment in Blues Blues history.
On this date last season, the Blues would erase a 2-goal deficit late in the third period to take down the Chicago Blackhawks. This one was a wild one on home ice. The Blues would score first, Robert Thomas, but then the Blackhawks would score 3 unanswered goals. So a 2-goal lead going into the third period. It would become a 3-goal lead early on, but then back-to-back power play goals by Brandon Saad and Jake Neighbors in less than 3 minutes put the Blues within 1. Kyrou would tie things up, and then Justin Falk would score the game-winning goal with less than 2 minutes to play in regulation as the Blues would take down the Blackhawks 7-5.
This date in Blues history was powered by Classic Air Care, making people comfortable since 1926. For all your HVAC needs, classicaircare.com.
We've got your chance to win a family 4-pack of passes to the 31st annual Let's Go Fishing Show. Taking place Friday, January 3rd through Sunday, January 5th at the Gateway Convention Center in Collinsville, Illinois. See the latest fishing boats, rods, and reels. Check out free seminars and live demos, activities for the kids, and fun for fishing enthusiasts of all ages and skill levels. Find your chance at that family 4-pack of passes to the Let's Go Fishing Show right now, either at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app. Powered by the Schaefer Door Company.
This is exactly where you want to be, listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN. Come on, man. Are you in or are you out? It's in or out with BK and Ferrario.
203-999-646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for in or out. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are in or out here on BK and Ferrario. All right, let's start out with this one, Alex. In or out? One of Oregon or Ohio State will win the college football playoff this year.
You stole mine.
The winner of that game will go on to win the college football playoff this year.
In 100% in. I don't see anybody on the other side of the bracket that can beat one of those two teams. And frankly, it's awesome that that's this round, but man, I hate that it's this round. And I wish it was like one more, or that was the potential championship game.
It's like when you get to the NCAA tournament and you have a 5 seed that you really love, and they like weren't healthy all season long, and they're going up against the 1 seed in like the Sweet 16. You're like, I think this is really the national championship game. That's how I feel about this one, with Oregon as the 8 seed. Or excuse me, Ohio State as the 8 seed going up against Oregon, the number 1 seed.
The NHL playoffs. You always get that second round that's like, oh, come on.
I'm in on this. I think they're the 2 most complete teams in college football right now. I agree.
Yeah, I'm definitely in on this one as well. I want to see if Will Howard can rectify the demons from the last Oregon game. Didn't play well down the stretch. He was phenomenal versus Tennessee. And on very few occasions, though, this year, guys, you haven't exactly seen everybody working in concert for Ohio State. I'm talking about the ground game. Judkins and Henderson, they were back against the Volunteers, and now that Smith has reemerged too, I think Chip Kelly is going for broke in this one. I wouldn't be shocked whatsoever if the Buckeyes were to actually pull it out this time around.
I've got to take Henderson is going to be a top 10 running back in the NFL. That guy's awesome. Travion Henderson, their running back at Ohio State. That guy, totally underrated. He's going to end up going in like the 2nd or the 3rd round probably in this year's NFL draft. I love him. I think he does everything well. He's a really good pass protector. He reminds me of like a more athletic version of David Montgomery. Somebody's going to draft him. He's going to be in the league for the next decade. He's going to be really good on every team. Mark Ingram, David Montgomery, like that style of, if you put him into a 2 running back system, he's going to be really good for it now.
Are you surprised he's relinquished so many carries? Though I understand keeping both guys fresh, but
awesome.
yeah.
He is in that kind of a situation right now where it's like, it's honestly similar to what the Lions have with that David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs role. They've got a really good backfield there.
Guys, in or out, one of the wild card teams in the NFL playoff picture makes it to the conference finals this year.
One of the wild card teams in the NFL. I mean, I'll say in because I said earlier, I think that the Green Bay Packers are going to make it to the Super Bowl, and right now they would be in that wild card conversation. So I'll say in.
Yeah, and for me too, it would be Green Bay because I think that this is a particular offense that has the ability to obviously travel, wherever. I still think so. I believe in what I saw from Love last season over the past few weeks, and really there has been no drop off in the ground game. If anything, you could say that Jacobs has definitely surpassed the production from Jones a year ago, even though he was tremendous in the playoffs. Yeah, give me Green Bay.
Yeah, I think it's only Green Bay too. Maybe the Chargers, but I don't.
You think the Vikings, right? Or you're out on?
I'm out on the Vikings. Yeah, I think that they could do some damage, but I'm out on them getting that far into the postseason. Just unfortunately for me, I'm kind of out on the Lions now.
How would you rank right now
in the NFC?
NFC teams in terms of their likelihood to be in the Super Bowl? I would say 1 for me is Green Bay. 2, I would still say Detroit, despite the defense, because that offense is so damn good. I think I would go 3, Philly, but 3-4 is the closest between Philly and the Vikings.
Yeah.
And then after that, I think there's a tier break where I don't think anybody else can get it. Yeah. I think it's one of those 4.
I think... I don't know who I would put at number 1. I don't know if I trust Green Bay. I think I would still have Detroit at number 1, but it's going to have to be a shootout style. Number 2 would probably be the Vikings, 3 Green Bay, and then the Eagles would be all the way at the bottom.
Gotcha.
Because I think the Eagles are one-dimensional, and once you stop Saquon, you're done.
Whereas I would actually elevate the Eagles because I do like their defense a little bit more than some of the other competitors, and as long as Hurts, the health permitting, that's the thing for me. Guys, loaded football weekend on the college and the pro side, no doubt about it. But I found myself watching entirely too much golf. Why? Because still, in this day and age, nobody moves the needle on the tube like the Woods family. Tiger and Charlie, they came up just short at the PNC Championship. But in or out, let's say in 7 years or so, we will be glued to Charlie sporting that victory red on Sunday.
If that happens, I'm in. We'll absolutely be glued to the television.
Dude, he hit an ace on a hole, and I mean,
you were watching.
I was watching because
it was awesome.
I'm enamored by the Woods, just duo that they have. But he hit I don't even remember what the yardage was, but he hit it and it bounced once and then rolled into the hole. And I was ready to do the fist pump like Tiger Woods in that victory red. So I'm in on this one. I think Charlie is going to be like the next exciting golf that people are watching nonstop.
The prodigy.
Yeah. What's the closest thing that we've seen to this? Because Tiger was this prodigy, right? He's on the television shows early in his career on the putting green, early in his life on the putting green. And then we see him rise up and just becomes one of the greatest individual athletes we've ever seen in our own lifetimes. And we see all of the ups and the downs on the personal and professional side of things, whether it's the infidelity or eventually the injuries that get to him. And now we see like this version of him where he said afterwards, it's the most fun I've ever had. And he's playing golf with this kid. Like, what's the closest thing in sports that we've seen to what we are witnessing with Tiger? Can you think of anything?
Man, not the hard part, and why I don't think so is like the downfall of Tiger and like for how fast it fell off, because like you don't typically see that for a guy that's at the top of his game. Like right now we're watching LeBron and Bronny, but LeBron has never had that tail off like Tiger Woods did.
The most impressive things to me about LeBron is that he was a child star and he never his worst public moment was doing the decision. Yeah. But it was never like something where you see him out doing something crazy. He made a bad hour of television about where he was going to go.
Which wasn't even his fault. That was the networks and like, we need money.
I don't know.
I don't think there is.
Else. People have brought up the Griffey family, but they never had the off-field stuff where it was like problematic.
Right.
I don't know.
And neither really fell off that significantly either. I mean, like Tiger had about 4 or 5 years there where he was just bad at golf. It wasn't until that tournament that was in St. Louis to where it was like, he's
PGA
back.
Championship.
But prior to that, I mean, every single tournament it was Tiger's not going to make the cut, and he didn't make the cut.
And you, like I said, you had the infidelity, you had the stories about the sex scandals, and then you had the crash. You had his body just deteriorating on him because of how seriously he took all of his workouts earlier in his career. I can't think of anything else quite like this.
No, and the saga still isn't finished. We are monitoring, okay, what about this would-be comeback from his 6th back procedure a couple of months ago? Scotty Scheffler is far and away the best player in all of golf, and yet in a couple of months, what is it going to boil down to? All right, is Tiger in any sort of competitive shape to compete in the majors? There hasn't been anybody who over the course of multiple decades has remained as relevant and has gone through, BK, as you said, so many trials and tribulations away from the links.
It's what the NBA is trying to deal with right now with their lack of stars. Like they have LeBron and Steph, and they're handing it over to the next generation. And just frankly, there aren't stars like Tiger, like LeBron, like Steph that pull you to the television, that make you feel like you cannot miss what is about to take place. There was probably a 7-year stretch where Steph was that. And LeBron, for almost his entire career, basically until now, was that guy. And the NBA doesn't have that right now, and it's becoming problematic for them when it comes to their TV ratings. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for in or out. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are in or out. From the 314, guys, in or out, there should be no football or sports in general on Christmas or Thanksgiving. People should just sit with their families and get what they want for the holidays.
Okay.
Out.
Thanksgiving, hell no. Like that's... I mean, I probably won't even be watching it at Christmas, to be honest with you, because there's going to be so much going on. It'll be in the background.
Chiefs are on.
Understandable. You'll be forcing the entire family to be like, damn it, sit down and watch Patrick Mahomes.
I told Kara that the Chiefs are playing on Christmas. She's like, it's a Wednesday. It's like, yeah, I know.
NFL.
Also, there's another game later, honey.
Yeah. I'm out on that. Like, again, I don't think I'll be watching most of it, but there are people that probably would love to just sit down at Christmas and football or at Thanksgiving and just kind of block everything else out and focus on sports.
I'm out. The NFL for me, as it has been the case, obviously, for so many other people in the audience. It's a staple on Thanksgiving. On Christmas, however, that has always been dedicated. Maybe not this year. I'm with you, BK. Yeah. We'll be tuning into the Chiefs. The NBA, I would watch a game or two back in the heyday growing up.
That's when the NBA started.
Yeah.
Like, the season had begun, but the NBA season, for all intents and purposes, began on Christmas.
For sure.
For my family. Not anymore, though. Now it's going to begin after the NFL playoffs.
And you know the Chiefs are always going to be in the playing Christmas, so congrats to you, man.
In or out, Vancouver will end up trading at least one of Elias Pettersson or JT Miller in the offseason. Did you see all of this, Alex?
I have.
What's going on?
I don't know, to be honest with you. It does seem like the media is blowing this out of proportion, but I mean, there have been instances in the past that it seems like JT Miller and Elias Pettersson aren't on the same page. They both stood up in the media. JT Miller did the whole tough guy. Do you want me to go get Elias and have him do the interview with me? I'm out on this one, though, because JT Miller's got a no movement clause. And unless he is willing to go somewhere else, why would you move? And Elias Pettersson's kicks in next year, and you're not going to trade that guy away. So, I think these are the two guys that you're stuck with. I don't think they're going to trade either of them unless JT Miller comes out and says, I want to be traded. And right now, he's made it pretty clear he wants to stay in Vancouver.
I'm out. I don't think they're going to trade either of those guys. I think they'll figure out what to do around them.
It's going to be disastrous, though, because they're going to lose Brock Besser because of those two players. And Besser, I mean, obviously is their goal scorer. And there is a significant drop off on their team once you go Pettersson, JT Miller, Besser, and then it's Jake DeBrusk and Connor Garland.
All right, last thing here from the 314. Guys, in or out, someone other than the Chiefs, Bills, Lions, or Eagles will win the Super Bowl.
Out.
Someone other than one of those four teams, Chiefs, Bills, Lions, or Eagles, will win the Super Bowl.
Out. I think it's going to be the Bills this year, but I think the winner is going to be from the AFC.
I'm with Alex. I'm out because I think one of the Chiefs or Bills will win the Super Bowl this year.
Same. I
He
just
doesn't
can't.
want to say it yet, Bradford. He'll get there, though.
Fair
I think
enough.
the Chiefs are winning the Super Bowl.
Baltimore's not there.
I've said that from day one. I don't know how they're going to do it. It's going to be weird, but I think the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl.
Hey, you keep getting worthy 11 targets per game. See what happens. Coming
looked
along
really good this
nicely.
week. He looks good. Hollywood Brown added an element to the offense. DeAndre Hopkins is starting to figure things out.
Hunt Pacheco tandem.
It's
Apparently,
starting to look
Patrick
better.
Mahomes' bum ankle turns into just like the Winter Soldier's arm.
Yeah.
He can run fast.
That's the way that works. All right, in 15 minutes, we'll get into the junk drawer. But coming up next, the Braggin Rights game was played yesterday, and strangely gave me more optimism about Mizzou in a loss than I've had all season long. We'll talk about why coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Make your picks for this week's Fastlane Pick'em Challenge at 101ESPN.com. Show off your football knowledge and see if you can top the Fastlane and the dudes from the Rizzuto Show on the point. For this week's top score, it's the Fastlane and the Riz Show throwing down all football season long in the Pick'em Challenge. Enter your picks for this week right now at 101ESPN.com.
Refreshed by Bud Light, official beer sponsor of the NFL. Easy to Sunday, easy to enjoy.
can now watch 101 ESPN live on our Air Alliance Team Studio Cams. Catch every show live on our YouTube channel or at 101ESPN.com. 101 ESPN Studio Cams.
Presented by the Air Alliance Team Heating and Cooling. Getting the job done quickly, correctly, 100% of the time.
101 ESPN Sports Center.
Wings welcome note to D-Town. I'm Bradford Bruns with a Sports Center update powered by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Tonight at 6 o'clock, 101 ESPN presents Puck Drop between St. Louis and Detroit. The Blues on Friday were defeated by Florida in overtime 2-1, while Montreal just routed those Red Wings. Braggin Rights game tightly contested throughout as Illinois held off Mizzou 80-77. More positive vibes, though, for Eli Drinkwitz. MU's football program secures transfer quarterback Bo Perbula. He backed up Penn State starter Drew Aller before entering that portal pre-CFP. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning detailer.
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
Feels a little strange to come back from the Mizzou fight song here, given the fact that they lost the game. But MIZ, that's our school, so that's what we're going to go ahead and do. With Alex and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. We've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Illinois wins the Braggin Rights game yesterday, 80-77, and they earned that one, man. They made all the winning plays down the stretch. Casper, as I affectionately call him, that guy is amazing. I think he's going to go down as the best player that Brad Underwood has coached at Illinois, and very likely the best pro as well. He's unbelievable. He makes winning plays from start to finish, and it was fun as hell to watch him go to work yesterday. But the team that I want to focus on here, again, is the losing team, because Illinois, we knew, was a legit top 25 type of opponent in this one. They had expectations going into the season of being a tournament squad, and let's see how far they can go once they get there. Mizzou did not. I came into this season, Alex, wondering, is it going to be a rerun of a year ago? And then I saw them against Memphis, and I overreacted, as I'm prone to do. They lost that game, and they looked exactly like they did so many times last year. They got up big, and then they have like this 12-minute stretch where they just forget how to play basketball. They just stop scoring. And the other team goes on this crazy like 16-2 run, and then suddenly you're like, what happened? We were up by 8, and now we're down by 7. Where did all of this lead go? They haven't been doing that lately. There's still runs because that's how basketball works, but it's not to the same degree. And in this game against Illinois, they looked the part of a tournament team. And they have now done that against Memphis, who's a really good team, it turns out. Kansas, who they found a way to beat on their home court. They played well against Cal. They played well earlier this season against basically all of the crap opponents that were on their schedule. They've taken care of business now. And my expectations, they have one more game in non-con. It's against Alabama State. They should do against them what they did against basically everybody else that was on their schedule previously that they lit up. This is a tournament team, Alex.
Yeah.
And so if I'm going to judge them accordingly, I do want to say one thing about what happened at the end of that game yesterday. Because if I didn't care about if this team was going to make the tournament, wouldn't even bring it up. Whatever. It's a rebuild year again. Mark Mitchell can't take that shot. If you didn't watch the game, there was, I want to say like 30 seconds remaining in the game, something like that, 20 seconds maybe. And Mizzou has the ball. They're working through their offense. Mark Mitchell had a really good game yesterday. He played really well. It was one of his best games, maybe his best game that I've seen him play so far in a Mizzou uniform. And he has the ball. It's kind of on the, like, he's right around the three-point line. His defender bites on the shot, and he fakes it. And then he gets back into position, and Mark Mitchell still takes a contested three-point shot, despite being a 23% three-point shooter this year and a 30% three-point shooter in his career. That is not the shot you want in that spot. And if you're Dennis Gates, and you could tell Mitchell wanted to take it, when he pump fakes the first time, immediately call timeout. Immediately. You've got a timeout remaining. You got to take it there. I didn't mind at all the final shot that they ended up taking with Jacob Cruz, who, again, pump fake, guy jumps beyond him, and then he gets what is a pretty good look as time is expiring. It just didn't go in, would have tied the game there. But that shot that they took with Mark Mitchell in the waning seconds of that game, that was a bad one. And I do think Dennis Gates has to take a timeout there, and Mark Mitchell can't be taking that. But otherwise, just a really well-played game by both teams, a really fun environment. That's what Braggin Rights was when I was growing up. That's what I remember the series being like. And for the last decade or so, it did not really live up to any of those expectations for the most part.
No, it didn't. And frankly, it was just because Mizzou, you just kind of lost that competitiveness in terms of their overall roster and for how good Illinois had been for the longest time. Man, I escaped that game, though, thinking like this is going to be a fun SEC schedule for Mizzou, mostly because this is a full game team. Like typically, not last year, because last year it was just awful, but 2 years ago when they were that competitive roster, it always felt like there was a half that was going to blow up in their face accordingly. Man, this one, like they went toe-to-toe with Illinois from start to finish. I thought it was going to get away from them once that halftime wrapped up. Yeah. Illinois knocked down the basket, and then they called it back, and it's like, oh boy, I don't like the way this feels. Yeah. Man, Mizzou went off, what was it, like a 16-4 run or something like that in the second half. And the part that I think I'm most impressed by is you have a solid rotation now. Like there's 7 or 8 guys that Dennis Gates uses, and it just flows through the game. It changes game to game. Yeah.
And this is something that he's had to kind of figure out is previously he would overuse his bench, and now he's figuring out, okay, in this game, these are the guys that matter. Like yesterday, Trent Pierce, big player. He ended up being in the crunch time lineup. Ant Robinson, who's one of their best players this season, basically didn't see the court in the second half because he wasn't playing well. And so they just decided to go with like Tony Perkins as one of their point guards in the game. They've had 8 players this year lead them in scoring in an individual game. 8 different players have led them at some point over the course of this season in their first 12 games in scoring. That's to your point, Alex. This is a deeper roster than they've had for most of his time at Mizzou.
They've just got different elements to their game. They can play the big man underneath the basket. They can play from the outside. They forced 17 turnovers against Illinois on top of when they forced 22 from Kansas. And so like those are some 2 elite competition that you're forcing to make bad decisions with the basketball.
And that's the style of defense that Dennis Gates wants them to play. Last year they got away from it. They couldn't force turnovers. So they were just getting beat all day long. Dennis Gates is not a guy that's going to, like, it's not going to be teach tape defense in terms of them just getting consistent stops in the half court. They're going to be a team that relies on turnovers. It's going to be similar to like the Minnesota Vikings, the way that they play defense, right? It's about havoc. It's about how do we create turnovers? How do we create negative plays? You're going to get yours, but we're going to get ours as well. And when we make our plays defensively, it's going to stop a drive, and it's going to get our offense the ball quicker. That's what Mizzou's trying to do defensively. Yeah, we're going to give up our points because it's going to be a fast-paced game, and you're going to get yours. You're going to get to the rim. You're going to be able to shoot some threes. Like, that's going to happen. But we're going to get out in transition from some of these steals, and it's going to be from defense to offense for us. And when that happens, it leads directly to points. That's what Dennis Gates wants from his defense, and it's worked this year. Last year it was a disaster.
No, and speaking of havoc, the ferocity also with which this team gets to the free throw line consistently. I understand that yesterday Illinois was uber efficient from the line. Missouri was still able to get there in spades, and I still do have some questions about playing from, really producing from the inside out. I think that you do ultimately have to get more from the middle. Now, I'm not saying the offensive output is going to come from a Gray or a Marshall, but there has to be a bit more from the beef down low. But I'm also not willing to really judge this team too much. I think it's competitive. I think it is well equipped to be able to compete in the SEC and make a nice run until Caleb Grill returns. Because BK, you mentioned the versatility and the way the points are distributed. 8 different leading scorers so far this season. Well, he was the guy on a number of occasions. Now you get him back in perhaps a week or so. That does so much more to deepen your rotation and also deepen your core of shooters.
So Ken Palm, one of my favorite sites to use, right? And they rate every team based on offense and defense and number of different factors. They adjust for opponent, all these different things. It's a nerdy basketball site to use, Alex, for college basketball. They have every single team in the SEC, all 16 of them, ranked among their top 64 teams in the country. I've never seen that before. They rank the SEC right now as the clear-cut, definitive, no doubt about it, best conference in America. Missouri, who we think is pretty good, right? We all agree? Pretty good team this year in college basketball?
I think so.
They are the 13th ranked team in the SEC, according to Ken Palm.
That's not good.
They currently have Missouri projected to be 7-11 in SEC play. That might be enough to make it to the tournament.
Could be.
It's not going to be easy this year to get out of the SEC as a tournament team, but this team is playing like somebody that is capable of doing that. Somebody on the text line, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 217. If Mizzou is so good, why did the Illini beat them? Because Illinois is better. That's the truth. Yeah. What you saw last night was a game in which one team lived up to expectations in Illinois, and another team exceeded them in Missouri. That's why Mizzou, to me, was the story coming out of that one, because Illinois was supposed to do that. They were the team that came into the season with the real expectations, right? They were the team that they played against Alabama, and Illinois fans wondered, like, can we beat them? If Missouri had played against Alabama in their fourth game of the season, Missouri fans would have been like, oh no, what's going to happen here? That's the difference, and that's what expectations do for you. When Mizzou came into this season, it was a disappointment when they go 9-3 and were a game away potentially from getting to the college football playoff. Last year, it was an overwhelming success when they won 11 games. What was the difference? Last year, they didn't have expectations. This year, they did. So when you have those expectations coming in, it changes the way that we evaluate things. So Illinois, tournament team, we knew that coming in, really fun to watch, lived up to expectations, and did exactly what they were supposed to yesterday against Missouri. They won. For Missouri, they were within 3 points and within a really close shot from tying, going to overtime against one of the, I believe, 25 best teams in the country. Told me more about Missouri yesterday than what I previously knew about Illinois. All right, coming up next, let's dive into the junk drawer here on BK and Ferrario.
This is Alexander Texier, and today is Blues Game Day on 101 ESPN.
Blues Game Day is presented by Buffalo Wild Wings, the ultimate arena for wings and wins. the picture. The real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN. Let's open it up. The junk drawer with BK and Ferrario.
Alex, time for the junk drawer. You know, I just got back over the weekend from Mexico City. Had a wonderful week down in what I believe to be my second favorite city I've ever been to. Might be number one. Need some time to think with that.
Kansas City's your number one.
Number one. It's between New York and Mexico City. Those are my 1-2 right now. Mexico City is far more affordable, so that might be the deal breaker for me. That tips it in that direction. But there was one slight problem, Alex. By the way, flight on the way down, no issues whatsoever.
That's
no
surprising.
issues. Now we'll say, the seat situation could have been a little better. I was basically sitting on pure metal. By the time I got there, my butt was completely numb.
Comforting.
Yeah, not great.
That sounds about right, considering how much you paid.
Yeah, it was $50 for me and $55 for my bag.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that makes sense that you sat on a hunk of metal.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you made it down there.
We were thrilled that we made it. So,
goes to show
the
you.
flights were fine. Had no issues there. We get down there, and three guys had already been down. It was me and one other buddy that met him. So 5 in total, right? So we get down there. They had been there for a day. It was our first night. We go to our first bar and have a good time there. It was excellent. The food was amazing everywhere we went down there. We go grab tacos afterwards.
Makes sense.
One of the guys says, yeah, I'm just not feeling great. You know, I don't think I'm going to get a beer here.
Oh, no.
Like, all right, cool. No problem. Gets to the next place. We get some more tacos, of course. It's like 11:30 at night.
Hold on. One of your buddies is just down for the count, and you're like, let's go get more tacos.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Come on, man.
So we go grab some more tacos, and he's like, man, I'm just really not feeling right. We get back to the house, wake up the next morning. He is not just not feeling right. He has been puking basically all night long.
And BK said, more tacos!
So he's like, I just don't think I'm going to be able to go out with you guys today. Like, I think I got to stay back for a little while. Like, okay, cool. He texts us later. He said, I think I'm going to go to the emergency room.
Keeps escalating.
We're like, what?
BK said back, more tacos!
We're getting some tacos. I'll grab some
This
to go.
guy's like, this guy.
I was like, damn, all right, man. Like, well, let us know if there's anything we can do. So he goes there. Remember?
Hold on, you didn't go with him to the hospital?
No, man.
You just sent your friend to a hospital in Mexico City by himself?
Him. He went on his own. He's fine.
To a hospital in Mexico City?
Yeah, it's fine. He was good.
Good friend.
They admit him. He finds out. Okay, you remember a while ago when I had the norovirus? Mm-hmm. Remember how I said that was the worst single experience I've ever had with an illness?
Yeah.
My dude had the norovirus.
Oh, you gave it to him. Okay, good.
So that was day 1.
Yikes.
Day 2, another buddy. Because he gets back, he's feeling fine. He gets the IVs, 24 hours. He's good to go, right? Another buddy. Dude, I just don't think my stomach's feeling right.
Everybody with me. More tacos.
The next morning, we're going to Xochimilco, which is like, if you've ever heard of Party Cove at the Lake of the Ozarks, it's like that, but on boats that are like moved by a rower. They're human powered instead of with the motor.
Nice.
So he's like, I don't think it's a good idea for me to go on a boat that has no restrooms.
Oh, that kind of sick. Been there.
So we're like, all right, cool. He spends all day on the toilet. The next day.
Better downstairs than upstairs, I always say.
Who's dropping next?
God, seriously. There's only
He's
5 of
feeling
you.
good. We have another buddy who we get to a restaurant. This is a Michelin-starred restaurant, Alex. One of the best restaurants in the country. It's called M. Really beautiful, wonderful place. We're not getting tacos here. It's like an actual...
More tacos!
He says about halfway through the meal, guys, I can't do it.
God, you guys are dropping like flies right now.
So
Raise a crowd.
He leaves. He's got to go get sick at home. He's feeling fine the next morning.
Man, well, the good news is it's only 24 hours.
The next morning, I feel like crap.
Awesome. You knew it was
It's my
coming.
turn. It's Friday or Thursday at this point. And I'm like, damn, man, I thought I was going to get away with this one. So it's my turn to feel not so great. I was like, you know what? I think I just need like a little bit of a nap. think if I get a little bit of a nap, I'll be fine. So I go sleep for a couple hours. I get up and I go to the market, which is like 25 minutes by Uber. I get to the market. I look over at my buddy. Like, this was a mistake.
No bathroom in this
I
Uber.
need to go home now. Like, I feel really, really bad. I felt like I had food poisoning again, Alex.
Oh, yes.
It's like round 12, BK versus food poisoning. Here we go. Somehow, some way, did not throw up, but felt like crap. And for the next like 8 hours, wanted nothing to do with anything that was food related, water, like nothing.
The wild part is every one of you guys like goes down, and then after you're better, you're like, let's go get more food.
Hey, guess what we did the next day?
You got more food. More tacos.
So
Buddy
we had
number
one guy, my brother-in-law Cameron, that came out of this thing unscathed. All four of us, the other four, had at least a day in which we were down for the count. But otherwise, dude, incredible food, unbelievable trip, really affordable. If you guys have any opportunity to go to Mexico City, despite like all of us going down for the count for a day, that sucks. That can happen anytime you travel, though. I cannot recommend going to Mexico City enough. It was incredible.
I just can't believe you're going to try and pump the tires of this trip after what we just went through. For the ride you just took us on for 6 minutes, and you're like, cannot recommend Mexico City enough. Great food,
dude.
Incredible time.
But wait.
The people were great. The Uber rides anywhere we went were like $10 to $15. Our typical meal, like we would go out for coffee, right? In St. Louis, you go out for a latte now, it's $7.50. Assuming you're going to pay $7.50. Like you go out for breakfast with coffee, you're paying $15 to $20 a person. That's just the way that it is now. Down there, we would go to breakfast between like four of us. It'd be like $20 to $25 total for the four of us, and that includes coffee, food, pastries. Typically, it was. Oh my God, it was amazing, dude.
BK could put a 5-star review though on all the bathrooms in Mexico City for how this trip went.
Yeah, I'm still not totally right.
Yeah, we know, buddy. We weren't sure if you were going to show up to the Open. I get
57
that.
minutes ago. You're good, sir.
I get that, though. You've made it pretty far, though, which is great.
I made it all the way to Thursday. I got there Sunday night. We immediately went to the bar whenever I arrived. So for me to get to Thursday, I felt pretty good about that.
Have you checked on your brother-in-law? Did he just like post?
He's good, dude.
He's good?
Yeah, I don't know how, but he's
Props
good.
to
He made
him.
it through.
Did he enjoy all the tacos like you guys? More tacos!
He's Alex, that's Bradford, I'm BK. Coming up next, why aren't the Blues capable of scoring goals anymore? We'll talk about it here on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN's Blues Fan of the Week.
Congratulations to Jody Atkinson of St. Louis, Missouri. She was named our new 101 ESPN Blues Fan of the Week.
Submit your pick now to be the next 101 ESPN Blues Fan of the Week and take home a pair of tickets to an upcoming Blues game. Learn more at 101ESPN.com. WXOS, WXOS HD1 East St. Louis, 101 ESPN is driven by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm. We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
All right, Alex, so I left last Sunday. Went to Mexico City, and from the time that I arrived in Mexico City until today, it's been basically a week. The Blues have played 3 games in that stretch, and they have yet to play a game in which they scored more than a goal in that respective game. With Alex and Bradford, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So they lose 4-1 against New Jersey. They lose 3-1 against Tampa. They lose over the weekend 2-1 in overtime. They did get a point, a well-earned point, against the Florida Panthers. Now, they're playing against good teams. That's worth noting here. But they're not scoring goals, which is kind of important in order to win hockey games
Just
nowadays.
a little.
Now, I've looked at some of the defensive metrics. I tried to do a little bit of research before we came on the show today. They're actually improving in a significant way defensively this year. They're like middle of the pack right now in defensive chances allowed, all these different things, right? So defensively, they've been okay. They look the part of a playoff team. Offensively, they do not. Offensively, they're bottom 5 in the NHL right now in most statistical categories. And we're seeing some of the results of that over the last week when they have just stopped scoring goals entirely. What's happening? Why is this offense struggling the way that it is right now?
A couple of things. Consistency is one of them, and you're just not seeing the same team in the offensive zone from game to game. I think you've seen improvement from that Devils one to the Lightning to the Panthers, but there's not enough. Go to the net, stand in front of the net, get shots to the net. That Devils game was a lot of, we'll beat you off of the rush, and we all know that doesn't work out for this Blues team. The Lightning game was getting a little bit more to the front of the net, but I just don't think they were willing to go to those areas. And then the Panthers, they finally got there. And then the second one is the finishing ability. The Devils game, for me, that was a game that I didn't feel like the Blues put a good product on the ice. They got better as the game went on, but you just frankly didn't have the appeal of what you did prior to with Jim Montgomery. The Lightning game, you got out goaltendered, and then the Panthers game, you got out goaltendered. They had, I think DeFrank's had this in his piece, they had 11 odd man rushes and breakaway opportunities against the Panthers, and frankly, you either didn't get a shot on net or the shot was right into the gut of Sergei Bobrovsky. And that Lightning game, you've got a couple of opportunities, but you missed the net. I think in terms of the finishing product, they're going to the areas, at least seemingly from that Lightning to Panthers game. They're just not being able to finish against this team. And another point to this, too, it's going to sound like a cop-out. I also think it's just been the lack of opportunity to practice. They have not had a team practice other than yesterday since December 9th before they played against the Vancouver Canucks. It's been game, day off, which you understand the days off by Jim Montgomery to try and keep this team going for how many games they've played. But I think all of those just kind of collide into what these last 3 or 4 games have been like, which is why I'm most intrigued by tonight against Detroit. Not a great team defensively, without 2 of their better defenders, not great goaltending, and you had a day off on top of a practice. So I'm hoping we see at least a spike in the offensive opportunities tonight against the Detroit Red Wings.
In this stretch of games that we're talking about, where Dallas, New York, Jersey, Tampa, Florida, 5-game stretch, you've scored 1, 3, 1, 1, 1 goals in those 5 games, respectively. Here's how the goals break down, Alex. Jordan Kyrou has 3. Pavel Buchnevich has 2. Thomas and Sonny have 1 apiece. Nobody else on the team has scored.
Yeah. And prior to that Sonny one, you went 4 games without anybody scoring other than your top 3.
In other words, your top 3 forwards this year, Kyrou, Buch, Thomas, they have scored 6 goals. The rest of your roster has scored 1. The depth of scoring has just disappeared. And that's supposed to be the way that this team is constructed. Like, they're supposed to win because they have 3 to 4 lines that they can put on the ice at any given time. 4 lines that they trust, 3 lines that can score at any given time. And right now they just don't. And so they have switched things up a bit. They are going with a new lineup construction. They have added even more to the plate, once again, of Alexander Texier. They keep doing it. They're going to keep trying, and we'll see if they can get anything out of it. Alex, is this just a situation where you've got to blend things up and see if you can get more out of it, or do you think there's more to this?
I think they're rewarding Alex Texier for playing well in these last two games. Now, kind of tells you where it's at. He's playing better than Brandon Saad, which isn't a whole lot because Saad hasn't been playing well. He's a healthy scratch once again.
Man, he was fourth line, healthy scratch. Like they're done.
Yeah, they're done.
They need to find a new home for Brandon Saad if they can.
Yeah, they're telling exactly what's going to happen, but now the roster freeze is intact, so you're not going to get anything until post-Christmas. But like Texier going up there, I don't mind it. I don't like the player, but frankly, he created a lot of offense against the Florida Panthers, so you're rewarding that player. I think the other reason, too, why you're not putting Kyrou up there, why you're not putting Dylan Holloway up there, is because if you do that, then you become a one line. You become a team with one line on offense, and right now this team can't afford to do that because other teams just shut down Thomas's line and say, well, we stop them, we're good to go. You need Holloway because Holloway can get the guys around you, and you put Holloway with Braden Shen, that line can generate offense. And Montgomery said it yesterday. Jake Neighbors right now is kind of like Mr. Fix-It for this team. You put him on a line, you hope that generates more offense for Sundqvist and Bolduc. So I think this is the best option you have right now to play on the top line. It goes exactly to the point we've been saying for the longest time, BK. You are lacking a centerman, yes, but you're also lacking somebody who could play on the top line to finish with Robert Thomas and Pavel Buchnevich.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. This comes from the 314. You guys act like Jordan Kyrou is a superstar. Guy's on pace for 68 points, LOL. Alex, Jordan Kyrou is on pace right now for 33 goals and a +10 on the season. Can we stop?
Yeah.
Can we stop? We just don't have to do this anymore. Like, if Kyrou goes through a 10-game stretch where he doesn't score a goal, we can have the conversation again, and I'm sure we will, where, hey, Kyrou's not producing. All he does is score goals. He's got to go out there and score goals. Otherwise, why is he going to be paid this way? Like, cool. We can have that conversation, and it'll go the way that it always does, and I'll get upset because then Kyrou will go on a 10-game stretch where he scores 6 goals, and then we go back to the same thing once again. Guys, Kyrou's having a good season.
Yep.
He is. He's one of the rare players on this team that is putting together basically exactly what you would expect out of somebody with his kind of talent, and he's making good on what the expectations were for him. He's not always on a line with somebody else that's going to put the puck in the back of the net, and that's going to keep the assist numbers a little lower than probably what he's capable of. Similar to Robert Thomas, where Thomas, if he had that legit number one winger with him, which I don't think is Jordan Kyrou necessarily, but if he had that number one guy with him, he would put up more points as well as a result of that. But Kyrou putting up 30 to 35 goals is pretty much exactly where he's supposed to be right now.
We're acting as if 100 points is just you snap your fingers and a player can do that in the NHL. And like people need to remember, Brendan Shanahan was the last guy that scored 100 points for the St. Louis Blues, and that was back in the mid-90s. Like this isn't something that you just say 100-point player, you're good to go. What you need Kyrou to do is what Jeff Merrick told us: consistently 35 goal scorer. And if you're going to be a 35 goal scorer on top of being a positive when you're on the ice, to me, that is a massive improvement. And for $8 million, that's what you need. It's just consistency. And right now, he has been consistent. It's funny how it works with fans because every year it's something different with Kyrou. The first year, it's the offense is great, but you're bad defensively. And then the next year is, well, you're improving defensively, but you need to score 40-plus goals. And now we're at the point where it's like, well, you're doing everything we've asked, but now I need you to be a 100-point player. Frankly, I think it's a little bit of the roster construction. Like if Jordan Kyrou's playing with a second-line caliber centerman, and that's not to take away anything from Braden Shen, I just don't think Shen's at that same level as like what a Dalibor Dvorsky could be. Well, then you're seeing the next level of it. But you know how many seasons Vladimir Tarasenko had 80-plus points? Big old goose egg. Yeah. He's been 75. Yeah, he was a goal scorer. He'd pick up about 35 assists, but he got you 37 goals, 40 goals, 39 goals. If Jordan Kyrou does that in 3 straight seasons and finishes as a +27, +7, and a -1, I am on board, and congratulations on your $8.5 million contract.
Jordan Kyrou is 26 years old. He's on pace for 33 goals and a +10 on the season. The entire list of Blues players in the last 25 years at his age that have been able to do what he's doing, what he's on pace to do this year. 30-plus goals, +10 or better, right? Vladimir Tarasenko, David Backes. Before that, you go back to Pavel Demitra in 1999. Before that, Brendan Shanahan in 1993. It's just, we've got to put into context what it is that we are witnessing by Jordan Kyrou. You don't have to call him a superstar. That's totally fair. But putting up more than 30 goals in a season with this kind of a plus-minus, which means that he's basically just not a huge negative while he's on the ice defensively this year, and he hasn't been defensively this year. to put up this kind of goal production at this age with a plus on the ice. It doesn't happen very often, man.
Real quick, then we'll get
really
into the break. This is the text that we just received. He ain't doing everything we ask. Get real. What else are we asking Jordan Kyrou to do? He has been the most productive player on the power play for you. He has scored the most goals on the season for you, has the most points on the season for you, and has been a net positive when he is on the ice penalty kill-wise.
And is playing
penalty-wise.
18 minutes a night. He's playing basically the same amount of ice time that Pavel Buchnevich is this year.
I mean, I don't know what else you're asking him to do on the ice other than have 40 goals at this point this season. And frankly, unless you're Leon freaking Draisaitl or Mikko Rantanen, it's not happening. Those guys are $11 million players. You've got an $8.5 million player. I'm with you. I don't know if it's superstar level because we have very set standards for superstars, but this is a star caliber player who is making $8 million and living up to it.
He has the same number of goals this year as Nathan McKinnon and Nikita Kucherov and Martin Necas and Gabe Velarde, Brad Marchand, Roope Hintz, Jack Hughes, Matthew Tkachuk. He's in company with some really, really good players. This is what you get when you pay $8.5 million. It's them to be in this kind of a criteria. Would you hope for more? Sure. You can hope for 35 plus. I think he might end up getting there because he got off to a little bit of a sluggish start, and since then he's really picked up the pace since, I'd say, the first 10 games or so. I think he's been on pace for about 35 or 40.
And then when Montgomery took over, it really took a step forward. Like, if Kyrou is not... When Kyrou gets more offensive ability players around him to where you're not relying on Brandon Saad for 18 minutes a night and relying for Oscar Sundqvist, that's when you start to see those numbers take off and you hope his numbers follow with it.
All right. So, glad we got that off.
We did that. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Anyways, why are the Blues not scoring goals? Because nobody other than Booch and Kyrou are scoring.
Because he ain't doing everything we ask.
That's the honest answer. Because they're not getting the depth of scoring that they have been constructed to provide. And until that changes, this is going to be what we see. It's honestly a minor miracle that they have produced as many points as they have in terms of the wins.
That goes to show you the goaltending and the defense of how they've performed and how much they've changed it around.
All right, with Alex and Bradford on BK. Coming up next, I want to play a game of NFL Contender or Pretender. And we're not doing this with the Bengals or the Broncos. Let's go to the top. Let's see how many of these contenders are actually contending for a Super Bowl, or they're going to end up being viewed as pretenders once we get to the playoffs. Talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Listen to 101 ESPN on demand. Get caught up with all our shows and podcasts at 101ESPN.com or on the 101 app, driven by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
101 ESPN is your home for Blues hockey. Check out either the 101 mobile app or 101ESPN.com for your chance to win a signed puck autographed by Blues defenseman Justin Falk.
Falk shoots it. He scores!
Get entered to win that Justin Falk signed puck right now, either at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app, powered by the Schaefer Door Company.
This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
Let's get into a game of NFL Contender or Pretender. We're not reinventing the wheel here. People have played this before. I'm sure you understand the premise, but I don't want to go. A lot of the time when we do this, it's like, hey, let's go down to the 7 seed. Are the Bengals a contender or a pretender?
Let's go through all of the pretenders and make an argument for a contender.
None of them are contenders. They're not going to the Super Bowl. Let's not waste our time with them. I want to go to the top of the list. Let's go to these teams that are viewed by a lot of people, including Vegas, as the favorites to win it all this year. I want to hear if you view them as truly a Super Bowl contender or a pretender. Let's start with the Detroit Lions. They are 13-2. They have arguably the best offense in the NFL this season. You watch their games and you walk away feeling like, man, I don't know how that team's not a favorite to win the Super Bowl. And yet, they have allowed at least 300 yards offensively or 31 points in each of their past 4 games. Those games have come against the Bears twice, the Packers and the Bills. Their defense is basically hemorrhaging players every single week. It feels like every week they lose another starter to the IR. Alex, are the Lions a legitimate Super Bowl contender, or will they be viewed once we get to the postseason as a pretender?
They will be. I think they're a pretender.
Really?
I hate saying it.
Wow.
I don't know. With a potential matchup to get to a Super Bowl, I don't think they could get past the Vikings. And I'm not saying that because I believe in the Vikings offense. I'm saying that because I don't think the Lions are able to put up those numbers against a legit defense. And unfortunately for me, if they had a defense that could get a stop, I'd give them a shot. But I don't trust their defense anymore. And I love the freaking Detroit Lions. But I think with Dan Campbell, who is always going to be aggressive, and I think with a defense that just for some reason is not going to be able to get one stop at some point in the game, I have to put them in the pretender conversation right now.
It's a pretender for me as well, and I have many more questions actually about the defensive side of the football as opposed to whether Jared Goff can actually get the big win and get this team to that next plane. And I know that there are some rumblings too about whether, maybe after all, David Montgomery can return in the postseason. No. I'm not sure about that. I think that's actually immaterial because sooner or later you were going to have Gibbs as the guy coming out of the backfield anyway. I love the vertical threats. Jameson Williams has turned into a star before our own eyes this season, but the defensive attrition, it can't be ignored. And not only would I take Green Bay, I think in the postseason, I'd actually be willing to slide with Minnesota and that defense over Detroit if the two were to meet.
When was the last time a defense this bad went to the Super Bowl? Because the Chiefs didn't get there. Remember 2018 when the Chiefs had that amazing offense and a terrible defense? They lost in the playoffs to the Patriots, which were the ho-hum, boring. We're going to play winning football. We're going to run the ball. We're going to win on third down. Like that's what ended up getting to the Super Bowl and winning it that year against the LA Rams. Who was the last team constructed this way that ended up getting there? It's been a while.
Was it the Panthers?
The Panthers had a good defense that year.
They were okay.
Ugh. They were a good defense. I can't remember the last time that we saw a defense this bad make it to the Super Bowl, because they haven't been bad all season, but over the last 4 or 5 weeks, as they have had continually more and more guys go down, I'm with you. I think they are a pretender, but in this version of the NFC, it's hard for me to say that. So I'm going to continue to hold out on a contender status and say maybe they can break the mold because that offense is just that good. And the NFC is that weak.
I get it.
That continues with our next one up. The NFC feels wide open for the taking, given the fact that the Lions are getting all of these injuries. And you see the Packers are not perfect by any stretch. The Vikings have Sam bleeping Darnold as their starting quarterback. Eagles, it feels like every week we're waiting for them to break further. The Rams would seem like the team that has the potential to walk through that door. Matt Stafford has done it before. Puka and Cooper Kupp are great receivers. They have a good coach. Their defense has really come around over the last few weeks. And yet, they have scored 21 or fewer points in 4 of their last 5 games. Alex, do you consider the Rams to be a legitimate contender or nothing more than a pretender?
Poor T-Bone. I say nothing more than a pretender. I think Sean McVay's an incredible coach. We all knew that. Their defense has mightily improved, like you mentioned, but their offense is way too inconsistent for me to buy into them as a serious Super Bowl contender. I think they could win a game in the playoffs. I think they could surprise some people, but I don't give this team any shot at winning a Super Bowl or, frankly, getting to a Super Bowl because you're going to have to go through somewhat of a gauntlet to get to that point. So
I'm with you on that. Yeah. I'm on the same boat. I think their offense is too inconsistent. It's strange. Earlier this year, I thought I would be saying, if we got to week 17, Rams were in contention. I thought I would be saying, defense just isn't there. Too many young guys, not enough of a pass rush. That's not the case, man. Their defense is fine. The defense is not the problem for them. It's the offense. I can't trust it to be consistent once we get to the postseason. I think they've got the right running game with Kyron Williams in there. I like Matt Stafford, but there are just too many games this year where he looks old. And if that's going to be the Matt Stafford that we can expect, I think they can win a game. They can pull off an upset in the postseason because he could have one of those games like he did against Buffalo, and he looks amazing. But I can't expect him to do it for 3 straight weeks, and that's what's going to be required. So I'm going to say pretender.
I will go against the grain. After all, somebody has to represent Tanner in the house today. Unlike some of the individuals out there, yes, I understand Stafford has played this season, and the regular season has left a bit to be desired. But going into the playoffs, make no mistake about it, this team is going to win the NFC West. It's going to host that first divisional game. From there, I have had some issues, about the lack of red zone effectiveness there. Kyron Williams has been very good. He's been more of the bell cow than a lot of us would have imagined, I think, in 2024. It comes down to me exactly how much does Cooper Kupp have in the tank as a complementary option for Nakua, because he is clearly now the number one runaway threat in that vertical passing game. If you're able to get more from Kupp, if he still has enough in the tank, and I do think that yesterday the addition, Tyler Higbee re-entering the lineup, somebody who hasn't been there at Stafford's disposal for the entirety of the season, I think that's going to be big underneath. And in the intermediate game, that defense is ascending. So with that in mind, I'll actually go with the Rams here.
All right. Somebody on the text line brings up a fair point. The comparison for this year's Lions, Alex, probably the 2013 Broncos. They ended up making it to the Super Bowl that year. They did not win it. That was the year that the Seahawks absolutely ran away with it against them. But they had the best offense in the league, and they were bottom 10 defensively. That's a really good one. So credit to the 618 for pointing that out. That's probably the closest comp for what the Lions would be trying to accomplish this year. All right, next one up. So we go through contender or pretender in the NFL. The Buffalo Bills, guys. We got to talk about them. They lost to the Rams a couple of weeks ago, gave up 44 in that one. After that, they go on the road at Detroit. They win, gave up 42 points against Detroit as well. So back-to-back week giving up 40-plus points. This week, they go up against the Patriots. My 3-point play. I loved the Patriots in this one plus the points. I thought the Patriots might win this one outright because I thought it was a really bad spot coming off of back-to-back road games against contenders, and now it's a potential letdown spot. Alex, are you writing that off, what their performance was this week, where they basically got lucky to win it against the Patriots? Are you writing that off as a letdown spot, or are you starting to question if the Buffalo Bills are a legitimate contender?
I'm going to write that one off as a letdown spot because I think they're a legit contender. And it's going to sound very hypocritical of me saying that I don't trust the Lions, who have the best offense, but I don't trust their defense to get a stop, and the Bills, who have not been able to get a stop. The difference, though, is the quarterback. Because as much as I love Jared Goff, I don't know if I trust him to drive down the field and win that football game. And frankly, the coach might make a bad decision in that spot. I trust Josh Allen right now with everything because the man is just on a mission. Whether it's with his legs or his arm, he's going to find a way to put his team in an opportunity to win the football game. So regardless of their defense struggling, they're a contender.
Clear contender for me as well. Yesterday, a clear write-off for that matter, too. You're not going to have a less inspiring performance from a statistical standpoint than Allen yesterday. Just 150 yards. He had the pick. It was still a divisional game at the end of the day. And just given all of the different ways that Allen can move this offense down the field, and he's still, we talked about this a bit last week, Alex, this Buffalo staff, the way that the game plan is envisioned from week to week, you are saving bullets as well for him to be able to make all of those patented runs in the postseason. Cook has impressed me this year as well. Is the line, is the line going to hold up enough down the stretch? And can that defense make enough plays? There's no doubt in my mind that you'll get to the AFC title game. From there, we'll see.
I'm going to say contender as well. And you mentioned it, Alex. Like, we can talk about all of the different guys, the defensive game plan, what they have off James Cook, all of these. It's Josh Allen. Josh Allen is the reason why. It's similar. That texter that brought up the 2013 Broncos that ended up going to the Super Bowl. Why'd they do that? Hey, Peyton Manning. Yeah. Peyton Manning at the peak of his powers was able to overcome a lackluster defense. That's what Josh Allen is being asked to do right now. Hey, go be Superman. And more often than not this year, he has done exactly that. Patrick Mahomes has done that at times in his career. We saw that with Peyton Manning. We saw it with Cam Newton in 2015, where he just went out there and was amazing. Put together one of the greatest seasons that we've ever seen by a quarterback. We're seeing something similar right now with Josh Allen and him being able to raise his game to yet another level. He's eliminated a lot of the mistakes. That was always my big question with him. My big gripe once we got to the postseason is, will Josh try to do too much? This year, he's taking what the defense is giving him, and that has been the biggest difference for them. So I'm going to say that the Buffalo Bills are a legitimate contender. Alex, is there anybody you would like to nominate as a legitimate contender or a pretender? Is there any team that you're trying to pinpoint right now, maybe a team that you even have a question about that with, that you'd like to throw into the mix? Because those are my three big ones coming off this week.
I think I would like to put the Steelers in this conversation. And I think everyone is going to sit there and say pretender. But at what point can you look at them and say, I got to give them a shot? Because Russell Wilson has continued to at least find ways to put up points. Their defense has been superb. Like, if you're going to look at the Minnesota Vikings defense and how great they have been, then you also have to turn and look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Win healthy.
The last 2 weeks, people will look at it and be like, whoa, Alex, they lost to Philly. They lost to Baltimore. That was their chance. They didn't have their best receiver.
And he's coming back.
Probably this week against Kansas City, which is bleeping terrifying.
Yes.
George Pickens not being on the field completely changes who the Steelers are offensively, because their entire offense is YOLO balls. It's, hey, let's throw it up and George be down there somewhere. And that's it. That's what they hope to accomplish offensively. And Russ is pretty good at it. And George Pickens is amazing at it. When he's not on the field, they become a different offense. So I'm writing that off. Even still.
Still put him pretender?
Pretender.
Because they're going to be the third best team in the AFC by the end of the season.
I'd still take Baltimore over them.
Me too.
I would go KC 1, Buffalo 2, Baltimore 3 for me.
And that's just, I say no to that because I don't trust Lamar Jackson in the playoffs. And until he proves me otherwise, it's always going to be a question mark.
Their defense has turned it on in a way where I'll trust them once we get to the playoffs. But I get it. I think there's a tier break after that top two. It's Chiefs and Bills.
Oh, I agree.
Tier break. Ravens, I believe in their own tier. Tier break. And then I would go like Steelers, Chargers, Broncos, tier break, Texans. Texans to me are, I think, going to be the worst team in the postseason this year, in the AFC at least.
Yeah.
So I'll say pretender, but mostly because I just don't trust
I'm
them.
believing a little bit in them, so I think I might actually say contender.
It's a really interesting playoff field this year because there are teams like the Steelers, like Minnesota. Question at the quarterback position, can you trust them? It reminds me a little bit of that year where it was Nick Foles and the Jaguars got to the AFC Championship game. I think it was Vikings versus Eagles that year, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was Case Keenum versus Nick Foles.
Former Rams great.
In the NFC Championship game, and then it was Bortles versus Tom Brady, of course, on the AFC side. Maybe this is the year that we see something like that. Sometimes there's just weird years in the NFL where defense wins, and that becomes the story once we get to the postseason. All right, in 15 minutes, we'll get to the BK and Ferrario Rewind, but coming up next, is Nolan Arenado starting to fall into the Torey Krug category? We'll explain what we mean by that next year on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN is your home for Blues hockey. And every month during the season, you can register to win tickets to an upcoming Blues game. Enter to score free Blues tickets now at 101ESPN.com or on the 101 app. Brought to you by Ted Drewes, serving original frozen custard since 1929.
Window Nation customers have been singing our praises for years. With fast local service and an industry-leading 96% customer satisfaction rating, it's no wonder.
I researched window companies for the last year to see what the average prices were and the quality of work. Window Nation nailed both.
Get 50% off all windows and 0% interest for 6 years. Hurry, this offer ends soon. Schedule a free estimate now. Call 866-90NATION or visit windownation.com. That's 866-90NATION.
We know you have a lot on your holiday to-do list. And at the UPS Store, we're here to help. With our pack and ship guarantee, your gifts will arrive intact or you'll be reimbursed. Got holiday cards to print? We're also the premier printing store. We've got everything you need for every way you holiday. Visit the upsstore.com/guarantee for full details.
This is Alexei Toropchenko, and today is the Blues Game Day on 101 ESPN.
Blues Game Day is presented by Buffalo Wild Wings, the ultimate arena for wings and wins. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Bo knows M-I-Z. Good afternoon. I'm Bradford Bruns with your Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Former Penn State quarterback Bo Pribula is ready to hit the SEC. Missouri football confirming its newest transfer addition last night. Pribula still carries 2 years of eligibility. His old squad just downed SMU by 28 CFP style. Besides those Nittany Lions, Texas, Notre Dame plus OSU also captured first-round matchups. Pucks, Jim Montgomery's Blues visit Detroit shortly. Puck drop happens at 6 on 101 ESPN. STL has lost 3 straight. This Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. So, Alex, while I was gone, Nolan Arenado decided to decline a trade to the Houston Astros.
Oh,
no! Yeah. That was not exactly what we were anticipating. We had identified the Astros pretty early on as, okay, if the Cardinals are going to find a suitor, this is a team that makes sense. Bregman's leaving. T-Bone kept asking, like, why wouldn't they just re-sign Bregman? I kept saying, the years, dude. It's the years. They don't give out more than 6 years. And I'm not saying that because I ended up being correct. It's just the philosophy. Like, that's what the Cardinals do. It's what the Astros do. I think it's something that we're learning in real time. Both teams are going to have to adjust on, but That's the reason. Well, the Astros decided Arenado was their guy. The Cardinals were going to be willing to eat some of their money. We got a lot of answers in this potential trade. We never found out exactly what the return was going to be, I don't believe. But otherwise, it was there, and then it wasn't. He decides to nix it and says, I don't want to go there for now. Still don't entirely understand what that means, but nevertheless. Alex, I listened back to our conversation that we had with Jason Stark, who I believe to be one of the best baseball writers in the industry. We talked to him right after the Cardinals had traded for Nolan Arenado. I want to give this a listen today and think about how things have changed since the moment that Arenado was traded here to St. Louis. Give this a listen.
The Cardinals have had so much success bringing in not just players like this, but people like this. People who appreciate what baseball means in St. Louis, who appreciate what it means to stand there at the plate in Busch Stadium and hear the roar of that crowd and know how sincere that is. No one's going to understand what makes St. Louis unique. And I just see this love fest coming between St. Louis and him in St. Louis. When he's going to be told by the Cardinals and then what actually happens, if there's anything divergent about those two things, it's just going to be because it's better than what he was told.
Awkward.
I mean, it couldn't have been any different than what he said.
I mean, the love fest was there for like
a year
or two.
2022 was a really, really good season. That first year, the offense wasn't quite what he expected. He said, I've got to adjust to the ballpark. Like, it's not what I'm used to. And then the second year, he goes out there and puts up legitimate MVP caliber type of numbers. And then boom, playoffs happen and everything has changed. That 2022 series against Philly is the moment that everything changed for him, for Goldy, for the team, for Ollie Marmol, for fans. Everything shifted in that 2-game series. Really, the moment, you can even pinpoint before that, the moment Ryan Helsley got hurt on that game where it was just a meaningless day, I think against Pittsburgh, I believe, right prior to that series against the Phillies where he hurt his thumb. That was the moment that everything shifted for Nolan Arenado's career here in St. Louis. And it hasn't been the same since. And now, I'm going to ask you this question, which would have sounded ridiculous a year and a half ago. Has Nolan Arenado become for the Cardinals what Torey Krug, prior to his injury, this has changed things, but what Torey Krug has been for the Blues?
Yeah. Originally, I thought no, because, man, it just felt like Torey Krug. It felt like Torey Krug fell into his own category once the opportunity to trade him showed up, and then it was like, oh, you screwed it over, and then everyone was like, boom. But I think Nolan Arenado is right there now, because I think what this is going to turn into is Nolan Arenado won't go to the team that he doesn't want to get traded to, and it's going to screw the Cardinals up in terms of what they're trying to accomplish in terms of Nolan Gorman playing third base. Every young player gets an opportunity to play their normal position, and you see what it is. Nolan Arenado is going to be there, and it's wild to say because a player is literally saying, I love St. Louis too much to get traded to any of these other teams, but I do think there's going to be some frustrated and upset fans that Nolan Arenado is a St. Louis Cardinal this season because it's blocking the way for a younger player to get an opportunity.
I still think he gets traded. So I'm going to say no to this question. I know I'm the one that asked it, but I'm going to answer with a no. I think he ends up going elsewhere. I would also say Nolan gave you 2022. And that's not nothing. Like, it wasn't what we all expected it to be when Nolan was traded here, where we thought we were getting the version of Nolan Arenado that was in Colorado for like the longevity of his career. That didn't happen. But you did get a borderline MVP season out of him. And for those first couple of years, he was mostly the player he was as advertised. But it is ironic to me, Alex, that was it after the 2022 season when he had the opportunity to opt out and everybody was like, oh, he's a Dodger. Yep. He's going to the Dodgers. He's definitely going to opt out. He's going to the Dodgers. And now all anybody wants is for him to leave.
Yep.
Like it's not, the irony of that is not lost on me, that 2 years later, everybody's like, oh man, if only you could just find a way to get him to accept a deal literally anywhere. The Angels, the Dodgers, the Astros, anywhere. It is crazy how much things can change and how quickly they can change.
And I feel like it's gotten to this point. Yes, Nolan Arenado, much like the Paul Goldschmidt conversation, has not performed over these last couple of seasons, which has put a lot of frustration in there. But once again, I feel like we're falling back into the organization put this on the team to where the frustration sets in because you haven't been able to help out in certain areas. You also haven't been able to develop these players that were supposed to be assets to it. And now you're at the spot where you've kept all of these guys because you weren't willing to trade any of them. And now you're like, well, we need to reset because we don't know what we've got in these younger players and we need them to play.
I don't know, man. I think there's fault on both sides, right? No, there's not 100% on either side. It's that pie chart where you've got to divvy up the blame somewhere. If Nolan Arenado over the last 2 years, instead of being 5% above league average offensively, was 25% above league average offensively, and if Paul Goldschmidt over the last 2 years, if instead of being like almost exactly league average, was also like 30% above league average, as they probably projected, I think we're talking about this team very differently right now. Like, I don't think they're going through a reset right now. If Nolan Arenado was simply the player that he was supposed to be last year, if Arenado put up, let's call it his first season numbers. If he last year had 34 home runs, 105 ribbies, and had an OPS of like 820, would the Cardinals be talking about trading Nolan Arenado right now?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I think they would be talking about that being their cleanup hitter next year, and everything pivots around Arenado and Contreras, with Sonny Gray as that guy in the rotation, Helsley as that guy in the bullpen, and boom, let's build around that. And then now you've got the pivot points in your lineup, and you're hoping that Gorman and Walker and Wynn and Donovan and Nootbaar and Herrera and all these other young players can build out from the middle. I think a big part of what went wrong here is that Arenado and Goldy just got old.
Yeah.
And it happened quicker than anybody expected. So
Which once
I'm not
again,
blaming them,
you had a window when you acquired those players before they got old, and you just decided to keep as is.
Sure.
And then you fell into this. But again, you're right. I mean,
I would also say 2022, they made it to the playoffs.
And they didn't perform.
I thought they had a pretty good team that year. They had a good rotation that year for the first time with them. And those
and
guys
didn't perform. So you're right. It's a slice of the pie both ways. But you made the great point earlier when I kind of pushed and said, like, I think Torey Krug's probably worse. Torey Krug was supposed to be the Alex Pietrangelo, and you didn't live up to it. Yep. So, like, as much as we can sit there and point
was
fingers,
supposed to be Scott Rowland.
Yep, and didn't live up to it. Unfortunately for him, you were supposed to be Arenado, and Goldschmidt was supposed to be Albert Pujols, and that's a tough thing to do. But that's the standards that are put when you get to St. Louis.
So, Vegas just sent out their win totals for next season. Jeff Jones just tweeted this out.
Oh, good.
The Cardinals open at 75.5 for their win total for next year. I'd probably take the over on that. It's the 7th lowest total on the board, ahead of only the Angels, the A's, the Nationals, the Marlins, the Rockies, and the White Sox. In other words, tanking teams plus the Nationals and Angels. So it's not where you want to be, to put it lightly.
Nope.
Vegas is not particularly high on your Cardinals.
And honestly,
I'll take the over, though.
I think I would take the over, but I'm thinking like 76, 77 wins. I don't think they go anywhere north of 80.
I would say about 80 would be where I've got them pegged right now. All right, coming up next, we'll hit the rewind and pass things over to the fast lane here on 101 ESPN.
This Saturday, it's an NFL triple header. Game 1, Patriots and Chargers. Game 2, Bengals and Broncos. Game 3, Rams and Cardinals. Coverage starts Saturday morning at 11:30. Your destination for the NFL in St. Louis is 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN has your chance to win a pair of tickets to the 65th annual St. Louis Baseball Writers Dinner on Sunday evening, January 19th at the Missouri Athletic Club downtown, celebrating the top performers from last season and honoring the legacy of those who have made long-lasting contributions to the Cardinals organization. Tickets are on sale now for what will surely be a memorable night for St. Louis baseball fans. Get all the details and get entered to win that pair of tickets for the St. Louis Baseball Writers Dinner now, either at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app. Powered by the Schaefer Door Company.
Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario, live from the Car Shield studio on 101 ESPN. Let's run it back with a daily rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Lou, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
Hey, if you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com or the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
It's great to be back in the saddle today,
It's
Alex.
wonderful.
Thanks for having me along with you. An honored guest on your show.
I
really
didn't even realize
you
you were gone last week, to be honest with you. So
I believe that.
This has been a breath.
Well, it was wonderful to be here. We'll be in tomorrow as well, off the rest of the week for Christmas vacation here. So we've got one more of these things for you guys, and then next week we got a couple shows for you, and then starting January 1st,
we'll be back.
We'll be back for about 2 weeks, and then I go out of town
not
again
January
for a week.
1st, January 2nd, and then you get like a week.
That's a really good point by you, Alex. All right, tonight the Blues back in action. They've got a game against the Detroit Red Wings. Alex, what are you watching for in this one?
Honestly, the offense. You want to see a team. Now you've had practice time. Now you've been able to kind of game plan a little bit. You need to find a way to start generating, really not generating, they're generating. You need to capitalize on your scoring opportunities. You need to finish. I'm not expecting too much with Texie on the top line. Enjoy it for a period because it'll probably be broken up by then. But Holloway, Neighbors, Shen, these are the guys that need to start seeing a little bit more even strength offense from.
I'm curious about Benner. I want to see what he looks like in this one.
You're not wrong, man. I'm a little surprised they went with him. I thought this might have been a Hofer game.
They've already pared it down. It was 3-1. Like it would be 3 Benner, 1 Hofer.
Yeah.
3 Benner, 1 Hofer. Now it's become 2-1 in terms of the mix, which I like. I think that's better for Benner in the long run. I think he plays better when he gets a little bit more rest. I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, but he hasn't been great lately. Let's just call a spade, and he needs to be better. The defense has been better for the Blues, and Benner at times has been the one that's allowing some of these goals. So I'm curious to see what he looks like tonight. The offense, depth of scoring, want to see that, and then I'll just have my eye on Benner to see what that looks like. And if he doesn't play well, I think you do. I know it's a longer break for this Christmas thing. I think you come out of this break with Hofer potentially starting against Nashville.
Yeah, again, I was a little surprised. I thought this one would have been a Hofer because you desperately need points right now, and Hofer's just got the hot stick. But on top of this, you got to get, this is your number one guy, and they are showing you with their actions that he is the guy.
All right, he's Alex. That's Bradford Bruns, who did a fantastic job for us today, stepping in for T-Bone, who's going to be out for the next couple of days as he is on his well-deserved vacation. For the two of them, I'm Brandon Kiley. The Fast Lane coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Jamie Rivers here, and this is my latest jersey giveaway of the season. It is a signed Jordan Binnington Winter Classic jersey, the OG, the original from the very first one at Busch Stadium. It is awesome. We all love that baby blue, and you look great wearing it too. Get entered to win that autographed Binner jersey right now at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app. Winner must be 21 or older. Jersey giveaway is refreshed by Bud Light. Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy.